Yes, people, how you doing? Welcome back to this multi-stream Friday Night Tottenham with me, Sean Butler, and of course, co-host, co-anchor for the evening session, Dave from the Irish Hotspur. How you doing, Dave?
Yeah, look, bit tired today, bit unwell today, a bit on a diet, it's absolutely killing me, in air quotations. I know it's actually not killing me, but it is, because, I'm a guy that likes nice things in life. But look, obviously the defeat yesterday, absolutely gutting, Sean. I personally don't find it acceptable. And look, we're stuck in a bit of a rut at the minute, and we need to climb ourselves out of it. But apart from all of that, how are you, my man? I see you got to meet Pedro Porro yesterday. How was the Tottenham club?
Mate, I got to meet a lot. I got to meet Ozzy our dealers, had a long conversation with Gary Mabbott. Listen, I'll spend a couple of minutes just talking about it briefly, if you don't mind. Gary Mabbott, absolute legend of a human being. He gets up every day, and his job, or one of his jobs at Tottenham, is to telephone people that are elderly, that are Tottenham fans, Tottenham members, Tottenham season ticket holders. He phones people that are 70 to in their late 90s, and then spends as long as they want on the phone. I think he said he'd done 12,500 phone calls in the last few years. He hasn't missed a day, even when he had some sort of tracheotomy or whatever, some sort of operation on his throat, and he knew that he was going to be out of action for 3 days. He got ahead of schedule and phoned 3 times the people up in the days ahead, so that he could keep to his plan. Lovely guy. I met Michael Dawson, who actually said to me he's familiar with the channels. He keeps an eye on all of us. I said to him, would you come on the Spurs Talk Show? And he said he would do if he was allowed to. All I've got to do is get permission from the club, and then he'd go on to other people's channels. Lovely bloke, Michael Dawson. I met Ledley King. I met Ozzy our dealers. I sat next to Chris Hughton and Gus Poyet. So I had a long chat with Chris Hughton about what he's doing now. He's working as the Ghanaian national team manager. Yeah. I was like, have you got a chance in the African nations? He's like, well, we're missing a bit of spice here and there. And I was like, what do you mean? You've got the Ayew brothers, you've got Salisu from Southampton, you've got Thomas Partey, you've got the boys Inaki and Nico Williams. I was like, we're trying to go for Nico Williams. He's like, no, Nico Williams plays for Spain, but we've got the brother Inaki Williams from Bilbao. And absolutely incredible. And then I spoke to Gus Poyet in the second half about the tactics. He's so tall, Gus Poyet, such a tall and lovely guy. All these people were just sensational, mate. Shout out to Danny from Danny Hall, his name is, who's the guy who provides me with the away tickets when he can't go, and he's the guy who took me to that experience. It was something extraordinary. But the last thing I'll say on it, mate, just quickly, when I said I was going to go on this experience, I got some people in the comments making quite sarcastic kind of points, saying, "Oh, enjoy watching Tottenham with Daniel Levy and all of his mates, the prawn sandwich brigade, all this stuff." I tell you what, mate, I was introduced to. There's only 100 people that have those tickets, right? Or there's only 100 seats in that section. I didn't meet a single person that was corporate, that was that was there just because they could. Every single one of them are die-hard Tottenham fans that just happen to have done very well in life and want to have the nicest things. But the atmosphere was brilliant. Everyone was getting behind it. Obviously, there's only 100 people, and surrounding them is either the footballers, the backroom staff, the media, whatever else. So you're a little bit kind of cocooned, but within the little box, there was no element of it that was like just wealthy people that have got no ambition or no passion, rather. Every single person there was someone who's been supporting Spurs their entire life and cared about Tottenham as much as you or I do. So I want to kind of dismiss or dispel this myth that the people that have those sorts of seats, at least in that particular enclosure, I'm sure there's other premium executive areas where it is more corporate-y or whatever, but in that particular thing, they were just very wealthy people who are very, very passionate about Tottenham, and it was an experience I'll never forget. So shout out to Danny and to his son who couldn't make it, which is why I got the ticket. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. The only thing that was sad about it was the game. You know, couldn't. We can't buy a win right now, can we? Can we, Dave? You know.
No, we can't. Look, first of all, I'm glad you had an absolute unbelievable experience. You know, it's what it's all about. And Mr. Hall, if you ever want to treat me to it, hey, you know, just hit me up and let me know. That'd be absolutely awesome. But you know, did you get to sit in the padded seats as well, Sean? Because I done a stadium tour with Jack and Nick when they were over from America, and you know, I got to see all in and around that area and everything else. It's a really nice, actually. It's a great experience if you can afford something like that. You know, unbelievable. But look. No doubt that, you know, everyone that goes to games, of course, they're Tottenham fans. Of course they are, you know. So, I mean, that just, I don't understand it anyway. For me, everyone that goes to that ground are Tottenham fans and they have Tottenham's best interests at heart. How people go about it, you know, is where the debate is. But, you know, each to their own. Each to their own.
Yeah, it's got to, yeah, the padded seats, they have these, there's like there's seat warmers in it, like you're in a car. And, yeah, it was a bit odd because I couldn't find the way to turn it off. So like
better experience than the plastic seats, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. For a big boy like me, you get a bit more space. You know, you're not feeling like you're up against the person next to you. But absolutely sensational. Someone was asking how much would it be per game. Like, I don't know, but I think it's. I mean, those memberships are never going to come available. Danny was telling me that. You know, the people that have them are never going to give them up because it's too valuable.
Yeah, they told us on the tour how much they were. They're not cheap at all.
Yeah, something like, I don't know. I probably shouldn't say. I don't want to embarrass the guy who gave me the tickets if he's listening, but a lot of money. But you know what? You get anything you want in terms of food and wine. Like there was a 3-course meal beforehand. You know, halftime sandwiches afterwards. You know, cheese and biscuits plus any booze you wanted, champagne, nice red wines, whatever, beers. It was all there for you. And of course, you get to see the players coming out of the tunnel. You know, just an incredible experience. Something that I'll never forget. But
unbelievable.
Yeah, well, listen, mate, look, that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to kind of just talk about that for a couple of seconds to make sure that because I think it's important that people know that the people that sometimes I think that Danny was kind of feels like people like him get a little bit annoyed with the way that people think of them. But they're not like just prawn sandwich brigade. They're as packed. I mean, Danny's been, you know, part of Tottenham since he was 13, 14 years old. You know, he's been he goes everywhere, goes across Europe and stuff. So he's very much a seasoned Tottenham fan, as is everybody else that I met there. But anyway, mate, let's get that out of the way and talk about the where we're at, mate.
Yeah, just before we do, Shawnee, let's welcome in people that are viewing in. Let's see how they all are, and then we'll smash into it because we are here to talk about last night. Hopefully, provide a bit of therapy for ourselves and everyone else out there. Let's start going through some of the comments to see who's with us this evening. Big up, Adrian Straka. Good to see you, sir. Hopefully, you're keeping well. We have Stradders. Evening all, big up Stradders, good to see you. And look, I know I was having a debate, I sort of back and forth with you in the chat the other day. For once, Ben Davies wasn't actually at fault. He actually had an okay game yesterday, Stradders. We also have Ash, big up Ash, good to see you. Hi Dave and Sean and chat, big up Ash, great to see you in. We also have Liam, big up lads, good to see you Liam, hopefully you're keeping well. Daniel Horton, good morning from Alaska, big up Sean and Dave, and I believe he's grabbed a YouTube membership on your channel, Shawnee.
Oh, nice one. Appreciate that, Daniel. Nice one, buddy. Very, very generous of you, mate. Look forward to getting to know you, mate. Alaska, a long way away. I bet it's cold up there right now.
Love to do a trip to Alaska. It's a lifetime dream of mine. You know, I watch all that Alaskan bush people and all that sort of jazz. You know, I'm fascinated with the area. It's one of the last sort of areas on Earth, sort of untouched. So I'd love to go.
Yeah, 100%. I want to go catch a salmon alongside a bear. You know, me and a bear standing in the wild waters going, are you going to get this one or should I get this one? That'd be awesome.
Salmon while wearing the bear as a jacket, lad. You own the land, lad. I don't mean to offend any of the animal lovers out there either. It's just a joke. Big up, Joe. Swell. Good to see you. Daniela Zitos says, good evening, Sam. I'm just feeling so depleted and down after yesterday. I think we're all in that today, my man. Spurs GCTV says, good evening, guys. Good evening. Great to see you in the building. Hopefully you're keeping well. Strader says, you can set your watch by Sean start times if you want to be late. to everything, lol. Look, that's more so on me. Sean's actually more on time all the time. I'm actually late to everything. Everything.
Sorry about that, guys.
So you can put the blame on me for that. Big up, Chris Hooray from Bordeaux Spurs. Good to see you in the building. Hopefully you're enjoying life out there in France. Good evening, Paddy Harnett as well. Good to see you in the building, sir. Hopefully you're keeping well. And hopefully you get to relax over the Christmas, my man. He says, evening, gents. Shawnee, why have your comments turned off on Twitter?
Oh.
I think your comments were turned off on Pedro Porro picture, if I'm correct.
Oh, really?
Unless you're shadow banned. Who have you been upsetting?
Probably everybody. I don't know. I'll go and I'll have a look. I didn't know I did that. I don't know how you do that. That's odd.
But big up, my man. Good to see you in the building. Also have Mark Sheehan. Tough time, Sean. Still support Ange and the boys, but can't help but feel our game management is poor. Appreciate our bench is horrendous, though. Absolutely, and that's the sort of talking point I want to get onto, Mark. Maybe at some stage, a lot of people are unhappy with the subs, but when you actually look back at it, he emptied the bench and he can only bring on what he has available to him. But we'll get on and talk about that for sure. We also have Mark Cousins. Now you know why Gary is my hero. Absolutely unbelievable by Gary Mabbutt. That's an absolute brilliant touch, keeping in touch with everybody. Absolutely brilliant. Big up, Moondog. Good evening, Dave and Sean. Good evening, Moondog. Hopefully you're keeping well, and hopefully that son of yours, Charlie, is keeping well as well, sir. Who else have we got? We've got Bradley. Bradley's 33 says, fun fact, Brennan Johnson, the new bail. We have not won a game when he has started. Yeah, could be on a 21-game thing. Hopefully not.
Wow, that's interesting.
It is. Good evening, King Huddle. Evening, Big Sean and Big Dave deflated. I did not see that coming. I don't think any of us saw that coming yesterday, my man. Big yourself up. Along with J-Mac, he says, big up, Sean and Dave. Salute to you, sir. Hopefully you're keeping well. We also have Julie Hinton says, my husband has just ordered some Arsenal pants after we lost yesterday. I am putting in for a divorce. That's nowhere near acceptable whatsoever. I would say is you have an opportunity that when they arrive to bin them and order Spurs pants and, just to sort of play mind games with them. That's what I'd be at, Julie, personally. Sean, any advice on that? How we get Julie out of this situation?
Well, I just don't think divorce goes far enough. If I were you, I'd be looking for hitmen. I don't know. I'm sure you can find one on the black market. Divorce just doesn't seem strong enough of a kind of an outcome here. It's outrageous, and he deserves to be punished.
For sure. Big up, Julie. Tequila 316. Hi, everyone. I've got Conte's number on speed dial. Shall I give him a call?
No.
Good evening, Del. Hopefully you're keeping well. He says there is no crisis. We also have CJW. It's ridiculous how people are acting. You can only play with the players you have fit. Robert Wilson says, big up, Sean and Dave. Come on, you Spurs. Good to see you in the building, Robert. And we also have Moonlover. Says, those heated seats do my piles no good at all, Sean. Be warned. I believe they have phone chargers and everything. They're comfy. I got to sit in one of them on the stadium tour. I was absolutely loving life. I was like, I need to become a millionaire. I could live life like this.
Honestly, the amount of conversations I was having going, listen, what is it that you do for a living? And how can I get into it for you to have enough money to be able to spend that much on this every single season? Trying to make some contacts and things, but everyone, I think that the ultimate answer was just work hard. Whatever you do it well and work hard, and you'll get there one day. So.
And I believe you have to pay for like 2 or 3 years up front as well when you're buying that. So it's absolutely.
And I think you have to pay when it was first announced. I think you had to pay something like a joining fee to be a part of the club. That's not like a debenture where you get the money back or you can sell it on. It was something ridiculous, like 50 grand just to join. Then on top of that, your 3-year commitment, plus you have to buy at least 2 tickets or 2 or 4 or 8 or whatever. So massive financial commitment. But listen, to the guy who asked the question around, what does it work out on a per game basis? I don't know, several hundred, but when you have access for 3 hours before the game and 2 hours afterwards and everything's for free, you can, if you really want to, you can really dial into the fine dining, fine wining, and get your money's worth. I tried my best to get my money's worth. That's why I was so like when I did the 8-minute or 9-minute video afterwards, in my kind of instant match reaction, I put it on, and then I was like, I don't know if that's going to sound very good tomorrow. And I woke up this morning, I was like, damn, was I slurring my words? Was I completely? I'd got through quite a bit, But It is what
to
it
get
is.
you shopping in Morrison's or wherever you shop for the week, just go in and load up there on dinners for the week. Get some doggy bags, take them home with you. Wolf Mauler says, just got in. The number one thing for me is that unlike Bielsa, for instance, we need to learn we can manage a game without compromising the commitment to the play style. Big up, Wolfie Mauler, absolutely spot on. Paul Abraham says, no point rejoicing when we score early. It's a trend to lose at the end of the day. It's hard not to celebrate goals when they go in, though, my man. It's really hard. Joe Kabee says it's only 10k pounds. It's more than that, way more than that, my man. Big yourself up. We'll welcome a few more in, and then we'll crack on with the conversation. We've got Davey Hall, big up the crew of Flat Caps. Until we learn to draw and not concede and at least get a point, we're going to be in trouble. But back this manager all the way. Come on, you Spurs. Absolutely agree with that. You're absolutely spot on. Big up, Conrad, Spurs 72. Good evening and good to see you in, along with Foxy as well. Great to see you. Two teams with injuries, out of form. Should be 5-5. Definitely could end up a high scoreline. If you're a better man, I'd definitely put my money on over 4.5 goals for sure. Revenite FC, Alaska is such a beautiful place. Seen a lot of videos of it. Absolutely unbelievable. Whose News is in here as well. Great to see you. Big up, Jacob, as well. Good to see you, sir. Hopefully you're keeping well. Peter Simmons, great to see you. Michael, Polish Michael, good to see you, my man. Hopefully you're keeping well. He says, I love going in on answering subs and saying the bench is shit in the same sentence. F logic, right? I wish more people use their phrase. Big up, Michael. And then we have dry roast peanut. They're actually nice. I'm a fan of dry roasted peanuts. We played really, really well first half. They just need a bit more direct. Need to be more direct sometimes. Yeah, I can see the point. I can see the point for sure. And then we have this from Ellie, just a girl who loves Spurs. Big up, Ellie. Really appreciate the support, my dear. And she says, we win 3, Arsenal lose 3. We're back, baby. It starts with Newcastle. Come on. Villa. Yeah, look, Arsenal heading to Aston Villa at the weekend. I'll be honest, but even if Villa win, it puts them in the title race. So I do hope that Villa win it. They've got great home form as well. I think it's 15, 16 on the bounce now without losing. And I think Arteta is up in the director's box for that, serving a touchline ban. So hopefully it does affect that Arsenal team. He's not, a good thing is, when we're watching the game, we won't have to see him jumping out of his technical area like a jack in the box. He's an absolute disgrace in that regard. But look, Ellie, I want us to get back to winning ways as soon as we can, because we got off to a very similar start underneath Antonio Conte, and it completely fell off after that. And we're starting to see the same sort of pattern happen again, and it's not good. So we need to drag ourselves out of it as quick as we can, Ellie. But good to see you in the building. Let me know what you think of Højbjerg's performance. I mean, I was dying laughing the first second when he air kicked. I was like, there's so many people out there that be like, that's what I'm talking about. I actually thought he had a good first half, but second half, I thought ultimately he sort of fell off completely, Ellie. But let me know your thoughts on the performance. And then big up Tim Man 007 as well. Good to see you, sir. And Shawnee, I think this is in on yours. And he says, we need a top striker as we are not clinical enough. We need new midfielders because of the AFCON Cup coming up. And we needed a centre-back. Hashtag back. And I agree with all of that.
Yeah, same. I think that, big up Tim, man. I think that, I mean, we can read into, I guess we're going to talk about it in a minute, some of the comments in today's pre-match press conference, I think it was, about the plans, and he came across like he was saying, well, it's just there's not that much money. I'm inferring here, but not that much money. We're going to have to develop young players, and look, it is what it is. Like I've been saying it for months. I've crunched the numbers myself, and I'm not surprised to see that, because I've just looking at the numbers, how much money we have spent over the last 6 years on average compared to our revenue, how much our wage to turnover ratio is. To me, it doesn't surprise me at all that there's not that much money. Daniel Levy doesn't want to put his hand in his pocket, rightly or wrongly. I personally think that, just because everybody else lives a credit card lifestyle, you shouldn't. I don't think it's right. But I understand why people will get frustrated when they look everywhere else and see ownership putting their hand in their pocket and taking that speculation and that risk on board. But yeah, we're going to have to find a way to make a lot, not much money, go into very clinical areas, and whether that's a youth process project or whether that is just going for 1 or 2 players, Tim, man, remains to be seen. But I do expect us to do business in January, and I do think a striker or a forward and a centre back are certainly top of the list. Although I saw from someone else today, Dave, that they said that a midfielder and a centre back was more of the club's sort of direction, which is, I guess we'll talk about it. A strange one though.
Yeah, I don't agree with. I think a centre forward is absolutely crucial alongside a centre back. But look, we will get into it, as we progress. But definitely agree with the sentiments of that Tin Man 007. I think we'll all agree. I do see a lot more Ange out, I have to say, after yesterday's game. However, I do think the majority is still behind Ange, and I think, they'll all agree with you that he does need to be back, my man. But look, we are going to crack on with the show now, everybody. So, this is streaming on Spurs Talk Show, Shawnee's channel, and the Irish Hotspur, which is my channel. Make sure you hop across both streams, share the love equally to both of us, and get behind us. And we're going to be bringing you a lot more streams together. We've got streams coming next week that we're going to be doing sort of earlier in the day and stuff like that. So make sure you stay tuned for that, and hopefully you enjoy this. And big up everyone tuning in and joining us right now. Look, Shawnee, over to you. Where do you want to take this?
Well, I want to start with the starting lineup last night. We went in a bit of I think the back four probably made sense. Ultimately, Udogie, Porro, Davies, and Romero, and Vicario in goal. I think most people would have expected that. I know some people were arguing for Roy Allen or for Dorrington, but I think that the back five kind of picked itself. I don't know if you disagree, then jump in. But after that, moving forward, we ended up going for a midfield three of Højbjerg, Bissouma, and Gio Lo Celso in the 10. Was that something that you were expecting? Were you happy with that particular trio?
Yeah, look, that was exactly what I was expecting. I done my predicted lineup the night before the game, and I put it out there. And what I picked is exactly what Ange Postecoglou picked. Look, I know some people maybe not, in hindsight, probably don't agree with the starting lineup. However, if all summer long, all the start of the season, it's if Ange wants, then you've got to back Ange. And at the end of the day, Ange Postecoglou has done the same with every other player, where he's given them an opportunity to try and impress in this team. And it is a meritocracy. And he gave Højbjerg his opportunity off the back of the Man City game. But I think, Jack sort of mentioned something there last week, Sean, and I think he's probably right on it. That Højbjerg is good off the bench, being able to impact the game. But when you start him, he fails to reach them sort of same levels. And I'm coming round to that sort of idea myself. But I do think he deserved to start. And at the end of the day, it worked. We end up having 80% possession in the first half, finished the game with 70% possession. So possession wasn't the problem yesterday. Selecting Højbjerg wasn't the problem. It was what we done when we got to the final third, which was the problem yesterday. I don't know whether you agree with that, Sean, or not.
No, well, I do agree with it. But look, for me, just quickly, I'm someone that I've always said, and I know people, certain people feel very differently about this, but for me, it's not necessarily always about success. For me, enjoying football, enjoying the way we play is the prerequisite for me to enjoy my football. That's why I didn't like Conte. I was never really on board with Conte, despite his early success at Tottenham. I moaned about him basically throughout his time, and I'm delighted with Ange, and there's nothing that's going to shake my enthusiasm for the football. That said, however, I think there's a difference between high possession and good football. And I don't think that we played particularly good football last night. I think we had 80% possession, to your point, but I don't think we looked like we had any idea how to penetrate a very stubborn low block. And I have to say, as much as it absolutely pains me, but David Moyes played a tactical masterclass. He gave up the midfield. He gave up the territory. That was all a deliberate part of the plan. And they said, we're going to bank in 10, like a 5 and a 5 or a 5-4-1. Try and break us down if you can, and you can't. And when you continue to pass the ball around like you do, eventually you're going to misplace a pass. And then when you do, we're going to break on you. And to me, I feel like having Decky on the right-hand side rather than in the middle, having Højbjerg in whilst I don't think that they did badly, like I don't think anyone played badly last night in the midfield or the defense. I think there was a couple of mistakes. We'll talk about all this stuff, but I don't think they played particularly well. I think that they were a little bit clueless in kind of lacking confidence, lacking kind of some sort of ideology, like a plan. It didn't look like there was a plan of how to break them down, and there was very little kind of dynamism in the setup from what I could see. And listen, I always say this: when you're sitting at the stadium, you don't necessarily get to experience it and be able to take everything in the same way as you do on the TV. So from what I saw, though, I think it was a lot of huffing and puffing, but it didn't really ever feel like we were going to blow them down. Even after we went 1-0 up, I felt like it was all too easy to control the ball, but that was by design for West Ham. And I felt like given the way that West Ham had set up, you didn't need to have Højbjerg in the team. You could have had Lo Celso in the 8, Decky in the 10, and then have two more creative players like a Brian Hill going at Soufal, and maybe Brennan Johnson on the right-hand side, which is in his traditional position, going at who plays? Was it Royale plays left back, wasn't it? So yeah, like I didn't hate it. I'm not sitting here saying it was bad because we did control possession, but I just didn't feel like we ever really knew what we were doing with it. And I think there's a bit of a crisis of confidence when we get the ball into the top end of the pitch. And for me, what I want to get your opinion on after at some point during the show is whether or not there is a template that's emerging around how to set up against Tottenham, especially when you're at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium with three losses on the bounce. Aston Villa sort of did an Unai Emery masterclass followed by a David Moyes masterclass. We had a lot of possession, a few chances last night, but not that many. And I just don't really know how we're going to kind of mix things up a little bit and keep the opposition guessing.
Look, we've had a problem in the forward area since pre-season. If you remember back to pre-season, we played West Ham. They'd done the exact same against us. We had all the possession, didn't, take our chances. They hit us on the counter and scored from a set piece and ended up winning that game. You go back to the first game of the season against Brentford. One of my biggest frustrations was we didn't do enough to break them down. Against teams that sit low block, you need to go on the outside and get balls in behind them and test them a lot more. We just refused to do that. We didn't do it last night, and we didn't do it against Brentford. Everyone keeps cutting inside, passing on responsibility, looking at someone else to take that risky pass. For me, the problem is in the forward area, and I know people probably don't want to hear it, and you're more than entitled to disagree with me, but we miss Harry Kane. And what I mean by that is we miss a striker in the box. Sonny has filled in and done an absolute great job, but he doesn't have that natural movement of a striker or the instincts of a striker. That fox in the box. You seen when Richarlison came on, how he managed to wriggle himself free to get that header, which he should have buried, by the way. Absolute shocking miss.
Yeah.
But
and it was a 1-1, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 1-1. And they went up and scored near enough straight after that, actually. But there's a reason why Richarlison keeps getting into scoring positions when he's on the field. And that's because he has that movement of a striker. Sonny just doesn't have that. Sonny, when it's coming up against big guys like that, he's constantly looking to come out and play to feet, which again is in front of him, not making runs in behind. And we are absolutely missing that sort of guy in the box in terms of making runs and knowing how to find yourself a yard of space to be able to receive the ball. But also as a knock-on effect, the reason why this has been keep happening, since the start of the season at Brentford and the wingers keep cutting inside is because, again, you don't have that striker in the box making that run to the near post, making that run to the far post, running one way and then pulling back to try and receive it. We don't have that guy in the box. So, therefore, there is no option for Brennan Johnson. If he puts that ball in the box, who's he putting it into? Same with Kulu when he gets the ball out the other side and Pedro Porro. They're not crossing it because there's no one there to put it into. And it's a huge, huge problem at Tottenham. And I'd argue we're more reliant on one man than ever before. Last season we had Kane and Son. Now we've just got Son. And if no one else steps up to the plate, we're absolutely screwed. So I think we got ourselves into a right pickle. But not having that guy in the box, that natural striker with them natural instincts is absolutely killing us.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I think that there was two ways we could have gone about it. Obviously, this is me being an armchair footballer. Not that I know what I'm talking about, but just going to give my average amateur opinion here. But I feel like when you see the game is set up the way it is, this is where I am going to critique Ange. As I said, I think you put it on your thumbnail. But I'm trusting the process, right? I love Ange. I love the football that I have seen for the most part. And I'm all about that as the foundation point for what to build. And I'm going to be very patient because I'm cognizant and conscious of the situation we find ourselves in without our best centre back, arguably, and without our talisman in the kind of locksmith role in Maddison. Plus, I think that we are massively missing and I've been saying it for ages, Perisic. I think his absence has significantly cost us with that creativity and his ability to drive at players. He's the best winger for driving at players in our squad because of his cadence, his step overs. He can get to the byline and whip the ball in. And look, I think that yesterday there was two options of how you kind of break down when you've got 10 men, 11 men of West Ham in the box, essentially, at times, and they're just giving the ball back to us, and we're trying again and trying again and again. One of them is to do a little bit more of what Pedro Porro was doing. Pedro Porro was getting the ball down the right-hand side and just driving it as hard as he could across the box. And when you've got that many men in there, there's an opportunity for a ricochet. There's an opportunity for something to go wrong, just like what happened with Liverpool, what happened to a degree with the Sheffield United, even though none of the goals came from that scenario. We were doing that as we approached the final 10 minutes against Sheffield United. And things can happen when you're putting that many men in the box and you're smashing the ball as hard as you can into the danger area. It can come off a shin. All you need is a little bit of luck to fall your way. Just like what happened with West Ham, by the way. Let's not sit here and throw the team under the bus entirely, because West Ham's goals, one of them was a massive slice of luck with the way that it was a pot shot from 22 yards that just happened to hit a pinball of legs and popped out the right way for Jarrod Bowen. That doesn't happen nine times out of 10.
I disagree on that slightly when it comes to our goals, because, we left ourselves open to that, by not killing off West Ham when we were dominating the game. So we left ourselves open to that. And we know by playing West Ham in preseason and even watching the last couple of their games, they sit there and they wait for that. They sit there and wait for that. Look, we can sit here and bemoan our luck with the ricochets of the ball and stuff like that. However, we left ourselves vulnerable and put ourselves in that position by not killing off the game. It's just not good enough for me. I'll put it in the title, and I'll put out a tweet straight away after the game. I said sometimes not the best time to do it, but I do feel like them players owe us an apology. I feel like they lack that sort of killer instinct, and we've seen that over the last sort of few games. Like even that second goal, Edoji's back pass sums up our sort of ego at the minute. Where it was just nonchalant. No awareness of West Ham players around there. Under hit pass. It was very nonchalant. Like they already thought they'd won the game, that they believe their own hype. And in that first half, we just lacked that killer instinct. Like we've dropped, what is it? I calculate 15 or 16 points from winning position so far this season. That cannot continue to happen. That's absolutely shocking. And I've asked the question about it in the last two sort of pre-match build-ups. Because I could
just quickly, mate, on that point,
issue.
We've dropped 14 points out of the last 15 from winning positions. We've been up in every game in the last 5 and only got 1 point from it.
1-0.
And it's resting on your laurels. And I think it's like you say, like Ange said, not trying to get the second or not knowing how to get the second is definitely something that's of concern. But at the same time, I think that you have to do and try and create and figure out a way to blast through when you've got 10 men behind the ball, all inside the last final third of the pitch. And for me, I think that we didn't do enough of what Porro was doing. We didn't do any of it from the left-hand side. When we did bring on Richarlison and Veliz, we then decided not to put the ball in the air. I felt like Decky reverted to type. I think that Decky, when you're playing against a team that wants to come at you and that doesn't think about Ange ball, that doesn't set up to sort of nullify Ange ball, when they're focusing on their style of play, which is usually going to be the top 4 or 5 teams, which for what it's worth, Tottenham have got a fantastic record this season against the top 4 or 5 teams, absent Chelsea. Not even sure if you'd put Chelsea into that kind of category anymore. And we'll find out what happens against Newcastle on Sunday. But we do better against the better teams because they're coming and playing against us. And you can see when Decky has space on the right-hand side and when he's in the middle in the first half, good things can happen. But when you've got 10 men behind the ball and you've got Decky that's always looking for the perfect thing, and then eventually he's either just going to do his usual cut in from the left or he's going to play it back across the box. To me, it becomes predictable, and it's never going to kind of never going to like be rewarded in the way that you hope. The other option that I do think that Ange could have done, this is what I was trying to get at a minute ago. If you didn't, like, the two ways we could have broken it down was for Ange to have realised. I know that he's not going to know before the game when he makes his team selection how West Ham are going to set up. But once he sees that what David Moyes' tactic is, and he knows that you're going to have 80% possession, 75% possession, and it's a case of protecting the ball, don't give it away, don't get broken on, and then try and find a way to cut it. Once he sees that, for me, the most obvious substitution was to take off one of Bissouma or Højbjerg and bring on someone who's got creativity, got some flair, like a Brian Hill. I know we don't have that many options, but you don't need two defensively minded midfielders on when you're not having to be combative in the middle of the park. West Ham gave that up, and I don't think that we adapted in game the way that we did against Manchester City a few days earlier, where at halftime Ange saw the problems, brought Højbjerg on to combat the midfield, took off an ineffectual Brian Hill. There was none of that in-game management yesterday. And then eventually he brings off Brian Hill, brings off Lo Celso, who was the one creative outlet in the midfield, and brings on Ollie Skip, which then you're left with what? Three defensively minded midfielders? It doesn't make sense to me.
No, look, I hear what you're saying, but I think at the time, when he was making them substitutions, the game was sort of in the balance, and it's a hard one, right? You have to weigh up. Do you go all out on attacking and end up throwing the game, and losing it because of your changes? Or do you try and make changes within what you're already doing to try and go and nick that winner? So I think it's a fine balance when the game is in the mix like that. I do understand what you're saying. But look, at the end of the day, he's only got what he can use from that bench. I think most of us looked at that bench and said, not sure if anyone's going to change this. Even if you said, bring on Richarlison, give him an outlet up front, like I was protesting for during the game yesterday, you still don't back Richarlison to go and take that chance. And if he did, you're talking about a different game altogether. The difference between last week and this week is last week we took our chances. This week we didn't. If Richarlison took that chance, we would all be sitting here tonight talking about how good Ange Postecoglou's in-game management is, because we would have went on to win that game. And he missed that, and more or less straight after, they went up the other end and scored. And it's just sort of fine margins. And I see a lot being made about Ange Postecoglou's substitutions yesterday. But for me, he emptied the bench. He brought on Valise, brought on Richarlison, brought on Gill, brought on Skip, even brought on Papa Matasar, even though he wasn't even supposed to be fit. So he brought on, he didn't bring on any defenders or anything like that. He brought on players that he had available to him off the bench to go and try and change that game, try and affect it. And they just didn't do it. It just didn't do it. And the reason why is because the same problem persisted. We don't have that presence in the box. So we carried on doing more or less the same thing constantly, just passing it all the way around the midfield. And everyone's going on about how great the possession was. We didn't create any clear-cut chances. That's how shocking it is.
Yeah, 3 chances in the whole game, right? We had the goal from Romero, which, let's be honest, was an absolutely unbelievable header from him. But, probably had a very low XG given the place he headed it from. Just an absolute fantastic finish. And apart from that, the only chances I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but from 24 shots, I seem to only really remember Richarlison's header and Gio Lo Celso's kind of drag down and pop shot in the first half. I don't really remember too much else. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like 23, 24 shots on goal, and you're only creating 1.75 XG, something's wrong there, right? Something's
because all the shots were being popped off in and around the edge of the box, and chances of you scoring there 9 times out of 10, it doesn't happen. I agree with you, Sean. I think there was one more. I think Brennan Johnson had a snapshot on his left inside the box, straight down Fabianski's throat. But that was it. And that's the biggest problem that I had with the game. I found it largely frustrating at halftime yesterday. Although everyone was sort of happy with the football we're playing, I was like, hang on, guys, there's warning lessons to be had here. I think outside of Burnley, they're the only team that has dropped more points from winning positions than Tottenham this season, and they're down in the relegation zone. So, there is danger signs to be had. But I also think it comes down to mentality as well, though, Sean. I just didn't feel anyone in them players yesterday. Sometimes in games like that, you're looking for one individual to step up and grab it by the scruff of the neck and say, today, I'm going to be the difference maker. And I don't feel like anyone actually really wanted it. I felt like they were just happy.
Who was that guy supposed to be?
Huh?
Who was that guy supposed to, in that starting 11? who was the kingmaker going to be, or who should it have been?
It should be Sonny. You know, that's who it should be. He's the guy that we look at now. Since Harry Kane, since we sold Harry Kane, Son's the guy. It should be him. But look, it's not always just on him. Brennan Johnson could have done a lot more. Kulu could have done a lot more. Lo Celso tried. I'll give him his dues yesterday. But it's Sonny that should be that guy. When everyone else is down, he needs to be that guy that picks the game up by the scruff neck and go make something happen. And even looking at him yesterday, I know he was in massive pain coming off yesterday. You could see that in the video clip circulating. And maybe that has something to do with it. It just felt like to me he didn't want to be there yesterday. And I know that's not Sonny. Before all the Sun fans get on me, of course Sonny wants to be here. But just felt like his mind wasn't on the game yesterday.
Is he playing injured? Like, let's talk about this for a second, because there's a few kind of categories I want to talk about. I do want to talk about whether or not Tottenham are in a crisis, because I think that you have to shake hands with reality and think that if we hadn't had the start that we had, the fact is we got 1 point from 15, we sit 5th and we could end up being 9th by the end of Sunday, and if everything goes against us. So I want to talk about that, but before we, and there's a few other things I want to talk about as well with you. But before we do, let's just talk about Sonny for a minute. This is not the first time we've seen him crying his eyes out when he gets injured. And I don't know whether that's just him, a sensitive guy who, is just an emotional person. But we've seen him limp off the pitch, look in agony, and then turn up for the next game. Do you think, is he playing? I asked someone in a neutral fan channel thing, and someone in the comment section said that this is no longer allowed in Premier League football. But I asked the question whether or not he or people or players in the Premier League sometimes when they're playing injured get injections into their joints, like into their groin or into their ankle and stuff. And I know that sort of thing happens in American football, where they have like numbing agents where they can still feel their ankle, but they're essentially masking over pain. But I'm not sure if that, because someone said that's no longer allowed. But if it is still happening, do you think that's what's happening with Sonny? Is he juiced up on painkillers, and then the painkillers wear off by about the 80th minute, and that's why he's in so much pain?
Look, I think so, Sean, but I think it's a wider problem than Sonny, But that shows the determination of the guy to keep putting himself out there, knowing he ain't 100% fit. But look, Richarlison, how long was he playing through injury? James Maddison since the start of the season. We've had other players do it, and this is a continuous problem at Tottenham Hotspur. Because the managers don't really trust some of the guys underneath them, they continuously roll them out because they feel like even a 50% version of themselves is better than what they've got behind them and more of a difference maker on the pitch than what they've got behind them. So we continuously roll them out. There's no way Sonny's 100% fit. He was injured all last season, played through it. He had a surgery just before preseason started. You could see he wasn't fit at the start of the season because Postecoglou was taking him off after 60, 70 sort of minutes. Sonny ain't fit. We know this, and I have no doubt he's playing through injuries and he's dragging himself through it. Because what other option do we have, or does Hans Postecoglou have, but to keep asking Sonny to keep getting out there? Because he knows no one else is going to score the goals. So he has to play. And that's the biggest part of Tottenham's problem. And that's why I always say, in the summer, that's why it's important to get your squad depth sorted out, because October, November, December, the fixture list is never, ever, ever going to change. We had the same problem underneath Antonio Conte at this time last year. Kudu was out for a long time with a hamstring. Sonny was out injured. We had loads of players out injured last year. Perisic, people like that. So many players out injured. And it's because we don't have the strength in depth. We don't have squad depth. We don't tailor our squad to these fixtures coming up over these periods of the month. But like I alluded to earlier on, we got off to a very similar start underneath Conte last season. In fact, nearly identical as the one that Postecoglou got off to this season. But again, this period, October, November, December, we're tailing off. And our players are going out injured. And we could keep sitting here and go, oh, we're unlucky with injuries, this, that, and the other. But the reality is we're not. We don't get ahead of the issue in the summer, which means when we come round to this point, we carry injuries. And when you carry so many, when you, the last sort of player we've got left, that difference maker, is Sonny. And that's why he's being all out there. And credit to Sonny, but I also think it's unfair on the lad because we're not seeing the best of him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna ask this question now. Not that I want to get into the Newcastle game yet, but just whilst we're talking about Sonny, and then we're going to come to some super chats in a second. Just quickly, Dave, do you expect Sonny to be available. It's only 48 hours away, and it's a massive game. Do you think we're going to be asking him to play? And if not, what do we do? Do you put Richarlison back in? I don't know. Alejo Veliz once again comes on the pitch and barely touches the ball. I just don't think he's. I think he's miles away from being ready for Premier League football, if I'm entirely honest. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
I do think some will be rolled out again. Look, it's hard to know where he's at. You're never going to get a clear sort of message from the club of where he's at right now. But I do think he'll be rolled out again Sunday. And look, if he isn't, I think you have to go with Richarlison. As much as people don't like him, at least he's getting himself in the position to score goals. Whereas Veliz won't do that. I've been disappointed with Veliz's cameos off the bench, but I also watched him for the under-21s for a couple of games, and I was saying to you, Sean, I have my concerns. I don't think he's anywhere near ready for Premier League level. I think he needs to be loaned out. In fact, it's actually pissing me off that Veliz is getting minutes over Jamie Donnelly. You look at what Jamie Donnelly's done for the under-21s compared to what Veliz has done. Does Veliz stand out head and shoulders above everyone else in the under-21s? No, he didn't. Does Donnelly? Yes, he does. So why not give Donnelly that opportunity and see if he can get into that position, see if he can do any better. But look, if Son's out, I think you have to go with Richie. We've no other choice.
Could you go Kulu up top?
Look, Sean, I've said before, I think when I look at Dejan Kulusevski, when I look at the way he plays, very sort of similar to Harry Kane. Not blessed with pace, but what he does do is use his strength, get his body between man and ball, protect that ball, and creates himself space by doing that. For me, I think Kulu could play up there. If he's comfortable playing through the middle as an attacking midfielder, he can definitely play up front for sure. And me personally, I would actually like to see Ange do that. I think that would be bold, and I actually think it would work out. I think what Kulu would need to work on if he did go up front is being more aggressive in the air. We've seen him absolutely brilliant against, Man City with that equaliser off Ake. But realistically, for the size of the guy, how often do we actually see him bury people like that in the air? We don't. So if he does go up front, he has to develop that side of his game. And potentially, that's why Ange won't put him up front, because it doesn't actually solve the problem if he's not willing to go and meet that ball in the air.
But we don't cross balls enough. We don't cross. We'll talk about this. I don't think we cross balls enough. We've got Veliz, we've got Richarlison, we've got players that could be good in the air, but we don't play them from the start, and therefore the tactic is to play a different version of football where we try and keep it lower. And then when the players do come on, I think that the other players seem to forget that there's a need to shift the tactic a little bit. Blaine Devlin, shout out to you, Blaine. I hope you're doing well, my man. He's saying, as you remember from 4 months, saying his summary: we play like Madrid but finish like Boreham Wood. Is it time to play Veliz? Couldn't be any worse. Yeah, well, I don't know if that's just answered your question, mate, but I think Dave and I are kind of in agreement that just don't think he's ready. I see people in the comments saying, how can you judge him? He's played 3 minutes. What's that?
What do you think he has to do to be ready? What can he do better? Because it's all well and good us criticized him. I've criticized him. But in your eyes, what do you think he needs to add to his game to become ready?
I don't think he makes any runs. I think he's quite stagnant. It's a bit of like he kind of just sits on the penalty box, kind of a bit of a statue. Look, I appreciate he gets 3 minutes at the end of the game, generally speaking, when we're chasing something and it's all a bit frantic. I completely get it. And I'm not sitting here in any way, shape, or form blaming him, writing him off, or anything else. But I think that the game I think he's had the grand total probably now of about 90 minutes of football over 6 or 7 games. And I don't really remember him touching the ball or doing anything in that time. So I think that he needs to go and learn European football. It's a massively different style to South American football. And so, but by all accounts, he trains very well. But listen, you've got to do it on the pitch. I'm not saying that he hasn't. He hasn't done anything to make me think that I would like to see him play 90 minutes just yet. I would rather go somewhere else, like you say, with Decky, or Richarlison. I think that Richarlison, you've got a £60 million player there. If you're not starting Richarlison, if Sonny's out injured, then there's something kind of amiss. And I think that the rest of the team need to adapt to the players that are up there. If it is Richarlison who's hanging around, then you've got to put the ball in the air because that's where he's at his best.
Yeah.
If you got Sonny on the pitch, then you go a different path. If you got Decky up the top end, you do something different. Like, I think there needs to be a little bit more. I think it's, maybe we're conflating who's responsible for the tactics here. Is it Ange setting the system up before the game? But I think some of these players need to be a little bit more aware of in-game management themselves, like be intelligent enough to see what's changing and not have to be told an instruction, just sort of do it. It should be sixth sense to these guys. They play football all day long, every day. They should be able to be witnessing and watching. And the very best players are observing what's going on whilst participating in it and adapting to the opportunities where they see them, the vulnerabilities, the exploitations that are available. The best players in the world are always thinking about how they can find an angle. And I think that some of our players are guilty at the moment in the front line of waiting to be told to do something different.
Absolutely
or
agree.
you know what I mean?
Absolutely agree with that, Shawnee. Absolutely fantastic point. And for me, like you clearly see, right, Ange Postecoglou's tactics work. It's putting them in the right positions. But what Ange can't do, and what he'll never do within his tactics, is say, oh, this final ball. Ange can't pick that final ball for them. That's decision-making of the players on the football pitch. And that's where, for me, it comes down to them. That's where I think they take the responsibility. The tactics put us in a massive position to be able to go and win that game. But that final ball, that final decision-making was lacking. Brennan Johnson had 2 opportunities down the left-hand side yesterday, and each one of them crosses were underwhelming, nowhere near Sonny. And that's the difference for me. And that's why I don't blame Ange Postecoglou, for yesterday. I blame the decision-making of the players for yesterday, personally. I think you make an absolute fantastic point there, Shawnee. Let's go on to some of the super chats there before we move on and talk about some other points. So that's the Blaine Devlin, 5 memberships. Shawnee, he's dished them out to Mark Crook, Liam, Batu, Dan Inwood, and Strathers. So, guys,
massive thank you, Blaine, mate. Listen, dude, your generosity to the community at the Spurs Talk Show knows no bounds, mate. Listen, I know I've been going to a lot of the games, so I haven't been doing so many of the watch-alongs here. But I'm over Christmas. There's loads of away games that I'm not going to. So those wonderful gifts that you sent me to give out to the Tottenham, the Spurs Talk Show community, they're on my to-do list, mate. But Blaine, I really appreciate you, buddy. You're always so generous, and can't thank you enough, my man. Can't thank you enough, buddy. Make sure if you are the recipient of a membership, then you've said thanks to Blaine as well. Really appreciate that, buddy. And then Ellie, what's going on, Queen? This one is for Dave, but it's aimed at me, I think. Sean, we penetrated as we created 23 chances, our best tally this season, but only 7 were on target. So our dilly-dallying and not finishing our best chances cost us, as well as the defensive cock-ups. We have to be more clinical. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Ellie. Like I say, watching us have... I was talking to Gus Poyet in the first half saying, it all seems a little bit too easy at the moment. We've got so much possession here. And he's like, yeah, but it doesn't mean anything unless you get the second goal. And I was like, I couldn't agree more. That's what we needed. And we, like I say, 23 shots, 7 on target, but none of the other than Gio Lo Celso. So we scored. We had Gio Lo Celso's pot shot in the first half. I don't remember. And then obviously Brennan Johnson's. I don't remember the other 4. They can't have been very impactful. Richarlison's one was off target. So I don't really... can't remember the other 4 that were on target, Dave. But yeah, just not good enough. Not good enough up the top end.
No, nowhere near good enough. And even the ones that did hit the target, they were dribbling into Fabianski's hands. He didn't have to pull off any sort of world-class saves, a great save. I didn't find myself sitting there going, oh, what a save by Fabianski. Not at all. Look, Elliot, majority of them shots, they were sort of in and around the edge of the box. Papa Matasar blazed one. I think Lo Celso blazed one, both within a couple of seconds with each other. Then a couple of them were blocked down as well by the West Ham defenders. But realistically, the best chance of the game we actually created was Romero's 6 yards out. Header, back post. All he's got to do is direct that on goals and puts it wide. But for me, that's only really the sort of best chance we created. Everything else was more huffing and puffing and sort of, I also felt like to me at times last night, players didn't really want to pull that trigger either, that they weren't confident in themselves of hitting that target. Felt like at times we were trying to walk the ball into the net, almost score that sort of perfect goal, or that everyone else was waiting for someone else to make that sort of create that magic moment, and it just never really came. You know, I do think, you know, the stats can sort of, you know, I like stats, and I do think stats have its good thing, but it can also sort of, you can manipulate them either way you want, in my opinion. You can sit there and go 23 chances, 7 on target. You know, we created a lot of chances, but in retrospect, when you go back and look at the game, we actually didn't. You know, so it sort of makes us, I'd argue, makes us look better than what we actually were in that department last night, Ellie. But I agree with you in terms of have to be more clinical. Look, for me, I tried warning everybody in the summer it would be a mistake to let Kane go, especially if we're not going to replace him. And we're coming back to rue that mistake now. Them games yesterday is where everyone looked up for Harry Kane to step up, and often he did. And it felt like they were searching for that one person to do it yesterday, except for we didn't have it. But look, it's an issue that needs to be addressed, Eddie, and I think it'll only get addressed in the transfer market. I'm not sure what more we can expect Postecoglou to do to get a tune out of them. You know, for me, it all comes down to what way teams set up against us. If they want to come out and play, they're going to get absolutely murdered, because it's what Sonny's best at. Look at City, the high line, running in behind. He's so good at it because he's used to making them runs from the wing. Mm-hmm. But when we sit low and block, I find Son gets sort of crowded out the game, and we struggle to get him in the game, and no one else then will step up, Ellie. So it is a massive problem. Although I agree with you, you know, we got the ball up to the final third plenty of times around the edge of the box. We just weren't good enough in possession in terms of that final ball or that creativity, that spark.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree at all. Big up, Ellie. Look, for me, I completely agree. I think someone was saying here, dare I say it? Where is it? Where's the thing? Dare I say it? Steve's saying it. Dare I say it? We looked a little like the North London imposters of years gone by, like a lot of huff and puff, right? Yeah. And look, and I think that's the difference. If you were to tell me right now that, you know, give us a year and a half, 2 years, and we'll have clicked, we'll have figured it out, the team will have matured, the team will have learned the system, and we're a part of something bigger and finding a way, like Arsenal weren't, but now they do, then I'm obviously all for it. But I do think we have to start asking questions. Look, I've seen you know, this narrative. Obviously, there's been some you know, some sort of dramas or whatever going on within the Tottenham community around this notion that, you know, is it okay to challenge the mindset, to challenge the tactic, to challenge the, you know, you know, what's going on, or do you have to sit there and happy clap? Do you have to sit there and say, you know, I like Ange Ball, I like Ange, therefore you can't critique? I'm of the version, my particular version on this, Dave, is that I do trust the process. I don't want another manager. I'm never going to sort of turn against Ange. And I know that those people that don't want to turn against Ange will look to turn in a different direction and go back to Levy out stuff if they don't get what they want in January. And listen, everyone can support the club however they want to support it. But whilst I'm on board with the mission and the philosophy and everything else, I do still think you have to, as a content creator, you have to be able to ask questions around what is going on. And for me, you putting aside for 1 second the injury crisis, right? I think that obviously if you have Van der Ven and you have Maddison back in, then everything's probably a little bit rosier than it is right now. Perisic, I think, is also a massive miss. I said it earlier on. But I do think you have to ask the question around what's changed outside of that. And I asked the question a long time ago, Dave. I asked it on one of my walks around what's going to happen first. Are people going to figure out what Ange Ball is before Ange Ball is improved and optimized and efficiencies and economies of scale are going to emerge within Tottenham? Like, Ange Ball has started really well, but you could make the argument that people were a little bit, you know, other teams didn't have a sample size to analyze Tottenham's version of Ange Ball, which is a little bit different to Celtic's, a little bit different to previous versions. And Tottenham maybe caught a few teams by surprise by the way that the fluidity of the football. But now, is there an argument to say that teams have seen 15 games of it and they know where the exploitations exist, where the vulnerabilities are, and can set up a certain way? Maybe not the teams that care about other teams, like maybe not the Arsenals and the Cities and the Liverpools. Maybe they're going to play their own game anyway and know that they're better than everybody else. But for the rest, are they going to sit there and have they caught up to what Tottenham's version of Ange Ball is? quicker than the Tottenham players are able to improve the version of Ange ball that they've already learnt. Is that something that we should be worried about?
Look, I hear what you're saying, and to a degree, everyone's going to know, every manager in that league, the weakness in their tactics, right? You've got so many analysts and stuff like that, punditry, even us channels, stuff like that, So everyone's going to be well aware of every single manager's sort of weakness or exploit, where to exploit sort of each manager's tactics. But what I will say is, even over the last few games, I do think the performances have been there, but the execution has dropped off completely. And for me, that's the biggest difference between where we're at now and where we were after 10 games. And look, I know I keep going back to this, but for me, it's down to the strength in the squad, the quality of some of the players coming in. It's just a drop-off in terms of quickness. It's a drop-off in terms of decision-making. It's a drop-off in terms of consistency and comfortableness being on the ball. There's no coincidence that we're now conceding more goals than what we were on that 10-game streak. We're scoring less goals than what we were on that 10-game streak. And, it's individuals that have come in that have been here for years. We've seen the same result under different managers in years gone by. Jose Mourinho had us top of the league and it fell off around December. Conte had us top of the league and got off to in fact, nearly identical start as Ange Postecoglou did after 13 games. But when you've got internationals, you've got Premier League games coming up and they're doubling up in the weeks. You've got cup games and stuff like that as well. International fixtures as well, which have doubled and tripled. We do not have the squad to keep going, and when certain individuals come in, they can't execute the tactics the same way as other players can. So for me, I put it more down to a quality issue rather than actually the manager. And look, I get what you're saying, right? People are well entitled to criticize Ange. I'm not one of them that you can't criticize Ange Postecoglou at all. You're well entitled to criticize Ange. But for me, I think Spurs fans need to go back and look at the similar patterns that keep happening in around this time. We've tried changing managers. We've tried changing assistant managers. We've changed backroom staff in terms of for training and everything else for the players. But we keep seeing the same patterns. And for me, that's the biggest question. Why? And then that steers me completely away from, have we been found out? I don't think it's a case we've been found out. I just think it's a case of similar patterns from before coming back.
So what do you see as the problem then? If it like I say, as I say, putting aside the injuries, because every team does have injuries. I know we've had a massive amount, and plus the Romero suspension, the timing of it couldn't be worse. But if it's not a case of tactical naivety, if it's not a case of, Ange maybe tactically getting substitutions wrong or setting the team up wrong, if it's nothing to do with any of those things, what's the culprit? Is it sloppiness? Are the players? I mean, look at last night. Udogie's the best left back we've had since Danny Rose. Right, and yet he put in, I thought he played fairly well, but it was a lack of concentration, maybe for his mistake, right? I think we've got the best right back we've had now since Kieran Trippier.
Yeah,
I think,
and stats show he's the best right back in the league, outside Trent Alexander-Arnold over the last since January. So that's proven.
Right, he's my favorite player, mate. He's my favorite player. He didn't turn me down for a photograph. Destiny Udogie did. But Pedro Porro didn't. So, and if there's nothing to criticize, if it's okay to criticize Ange, but you choose to say, well, it's actually not, if it's the patterns that you're seeing that are similar, then what is it? Is it a maturity within the team? Is it like a professionalism? Is it a taking it seriously? Is it a confidence issue? Where do you lay your fears around what's going on?
It's a complacency issue, right? These players know that if there's a drop-off in form, they're never going to take the watering can for it. The managers are. They know that. It's been proven at Tottenham Hotspur the last couple of years. For me, it's down to complacency, right? We were keeping clean sheets over that 10-game run. And although he wasn't at fault last night, but Ben Davies was at fault the last couple of weeks for some of the soft goals we've conceded. Giovanni Lo Celso, although wasn't at fault the last couple of games, but tell me what other club would wait 4.5 years for a player to come in and start performing? And for me, this is a massive problem. You've got players that have been here too long that can just turn up and perform when they want, and the club allows it. Outside of the manager and outside of what they try to say, they allow it. That wouldn't happen at City. it wouldn't happen at Liverpool, but it happens at Tottenham, and that's where complacency sets in, because people know it's grand. I can have an off day. There's no repercussions for it. Harry Kane alluded to it in his comments when he left for Bayern Munich. Conte, alluded to it when he ended up storming out, and I see something last night that really concerns me. All summer long, all the way up to this point, Postecoglou has protected them players in the press, just like Conte done for a while, just like Jose done for a while. But last night, he finally sort of laid the blame at the players' door. And we know how that goes once we start seeing that. So I'm worried about the sort of time and period where we're at Tottenham Hotspur, that Andrew's already starting to lose his rag with the players. But for me, it comes down to complacency. Like I've said before, Sean, there's no consequences for not performing. There's no consequences for costing us games. There's no consequences for getting managers sacked at this football club. So that inevitably will allow complacency to seep right through.
So if we are sort of ruining a bygone era, hopefully a bygone era, we're still feeling the consequences of poor transfers, poor decisions around who to employ for the football club. The fact that we spend as much money as we do, but we're still limited in budget, is in no small part because of the fact that we spent £250 million and had that all on loan last season and haven't really sold any of it. The only money we've really raised has been from our best player. Everyone else is still here, still on loan, not really, being able to kind of refill those buckets. Let me ask you this though: if we hope that stuff's part of a bygone era, has the signings that we've signed right now and the money we've spent, even though a lot of them are, on youth team players or sort of younger players, but of the highest quality, when you hear Ange Postecoglou saying things like, we're probably going to be looking for the top quality youth, go around and developing young players. We saw, I'm not sure who said it on Twitter, a top tier one said Tottenham's plan is to go after the top quality youth again. When you look at the likes of Brennan Johnson costing 55 million, and I know I'm, again, just putting it out there, not writing him off, but he hasn't set the world alight since he came in, right? And I think someone made the point earlier, he hasn't won a game yet, or hasn't started a game, hasn't won a game that he started. Veliz obviously hasn't come in, but well ahead of schedule, no expectation to. Ash Phillips. Are we spending money potentially on players that either aren't ready, or potentially, again, like you could make the same argument for Richarlison, spending too much money on players because they're young and you think that there's a sell-on value, and we're puffed into overpaying for players that have potential, that have quality, but aren't really necessarily value for money? Are we still on the path of inaccuracies with our spending habits?
Look, I don't think it's so much of a problem with the spending habits. I think Feliz is only sort of called into question because we didn't go and pay to replace Harry Kane properly.
Mm-hmm.
Richarlison was already brought in on 60 million before that, hasn't done the business. So that's why Feliz is coming more to the front. We didn't go out and buy any centre-backs bar one last summer, which Ange Postecoglou asked for two. Ali Gold told us last January when Conte asked for centre-backs that we'd be getting two in the summer. But the club haven't done enough. So now people are calling, well, is Phillips ready? Is Dorrington ready? When we shouldn't really be at this stage. And that's because Davies has stepped in and hasn't done enough. Dyer has stepped in and hasn't done enough. So for me, look, I actually have no problem with the business model. I actually like the business model. I think everybody shouldn't be surprised about the quotes that came out today, considering you look, since Paratici has come in here and that we've actively tried to lower the average age of the squad. That's been something we've actively been trying to do since he's come here. So I have no problem with the business model as per se, but it's how far we go to implement the business model. We don't go far enough. Not bringing in a centre-back was a killer. So now we're sitting here asking Ashley Phillips to step in. But really, if we'd done the business we'd done, we'd be like a Liverpool, like a City, where you can bring these players up, dip them in, dip them out, give them more time to develop. But right now, because same old individuals of years gone by are stepping in and not doing the business, now all of a sudden we're looking down at these guys and hoping that one of these can come in and save our skins. But we really shouldn't be at that situation. For me, it's just about the squad. And this is why I sort of I'm not going to say a campaign, but put it out there about ripping up contracts in the summer and stop this nonsense of loaning off players and passing on the responsibility, because all it's doing is just delaying it's just delaying this process of where we're at trying to rebuild this squad. All it's doing is hemorrhaging us more money the longer it goes on. I get it's not ideal to just solve the issue, but you'd recover quickly from resolving the issue in one fell sweep than what we're currently doing right now. And it is having repercussions. So for me, I have no problem with the youth-centric model. And we shouldn't be, ideally, I shouldn't be sitting here screaming for Phillips to play. I shouldn't be here sitting screaming for Donnelly to play. I really shouldn't. The reality is we've got backups that are of age, that are of experience. They're just not good enough, and we know this. They haven't been good enough under multiple different managers.
So on that basis, then, is that part of the mindset for people like you, people who think the way you do, and I share a lot of your sentiments. Is that the reason why when rival fans right now are saying, why are Tottenham fans okay with losing 5 leading positions and only making 1 point from the last 15? Is it blind faith in Ange and his philosophy and that's enough, and that everything else goes out of the window, and that there's no standards being set, there's no expectations of any level of success for the season? Is it a tolerance of the situation with regards injuries, or is it more because people recognize actually, our squad isn't deep enough and we're still a victim of prior mistakes that for 3 or 4 years, haunt us because we can't sell these players, and therefore, you sign a dud on a 4-year contract. That guy is hanging around the club for the next 1,200 days, 1,300 days, and that is still a problem and will be a problem for the next, at least for the next 6 months.
Yeah, 100%, lad. They all know it. They sit there, they laugh at us with, they all said it on that 10-game run. Wait till Tottenham get injuries. They're going to go back to the same old Tottenham. They all knew, because they know the players, some of the squad, the strength and depth isn't good enough. And like I said, it wouldn't be tolerated at their clubs. As much as we don't want to hear it, it just would not be tolerated, And it's a biggest part of our problem. And for me, we can sit here, like we brought in Jose Mourinho, who's managed to change mindsets at other clubs. We brought in Conte, who's been able to challenge mindsets at other clubs. Harry Kane left in the summer and said, winning at Tottenham isn't the be-all and end-all. This problem is bigger than Ange Postecoglou. This is a problem that is inherent in the club that needs to be sorted out before any manager can really change the mindset. He has to be allowed to clear this squad out and continue to bring in these players. The players that Ange Postecoglou has brought in so far have hit the ground running and have done a fantastic job, and a main part of the reason why we went on that 10-game unbeaten record. But since he's had to use players that weren't his picks, look at the drop-off. And for me, it's just and it's only a problem that, and I'm not just doing this because we lost, but I've always sort of held the same opinion, on this, Sean. When we spoke about this many times, it's only a problem that Daniel Levy can sort out, getting tough on these guys and saying, look, no more of this. For instance, we allowed Dyer to hang around in the summer. Why? What's he done this season? What's he contributed? And now we're going to be, doing everything we can to get him out in January, but the damage is already done. And this is the problem. And until that's sorted out, and we stop accepting mediocrity, we stop begging players to perform even though they haven't done it, we ain't going to move on. Now, look, I'm not sitting here and saying it's our main problem, but until I see Spurs give a manager a proper squad to work with when these fixtures come in thick and fast, and it's his squad, players that he trusts, then I struggle to go after managers. I really do. I feel sorry for them at times.
Yeah, listen, I agree. I 100% agree with that the squad isn't his yet. But at the same time, I think that, I know this season there's only been 1 manager sacking, I think, or 2 manager sackings, and that's unusual. But let's be honest, like the last season was maybe an extreme on the other end, where I think there was like 17 manager dismissals within the year. But ultimately, the average managerial tenure in a Premier League football club at the moment is, I think, 16 months. And when players for any team
not the top clubs, not the top clubs, there's a difference. Not the top clubs. How long has Pep Guardiola been at City? How long has Klopp been at Liverpool? How long has Arteta now been at Arsenal? It's that figure is massaged or upped because of the lower clubs turning over their managers regularly. But when you actually look at the top clubs, it's not the same. So, I think we have to differentiate that. Sorry, I'm going to log out and log back in. My camera's gone wild.
I think Manchester United have gone through a lot of managers. I think Chelsea have gone through a lot of managers. Oh, he's gone. I think that I think that the very top clubs, the most successful clubs, and at the moment you can only really point to two, is Liverpool and Manchester City. And why would you change your winning formula? But for me personally, I think that you have to shake hands with the reality a little bit, guys. When we say things, he's just restarting himself. He's coming back in a second. I think you have to. I think you have to kind of recognize that when you sign a player, you're generally signing him on a 4-year contract, or if you sign a young player, you might be signing him on a 5 or 6 year contract. And when you bake that into against and compare it to the relative average duration of a manager in Premier League football, you're going to see if you stay at that club for the entirety of your contract, you're going to see 4 managers in that time. So I think it's a little bit, for me personally, I think this notion that you can't judge a manager until he's got his squad, that doesn't exist for the most part in 90% of football clubs, because if a manager doesn't work with what he inherits, he's out of the door anyway. And I think that's the same with Tottenham, and that's the same with most football clubs. I think just the reality of the job is you have to work with what you've got, and you're going to try your best to get things done. I think an interesting example of a manager that's only been here for a short time that has done relatively well, or in fact, incredibly well. And it pains me to say it, because I'm going to have to put out a some sort of acknowledgement that, as much as it kills me, that Henry Wright was right about this club and this guy, and that's Aston Villa's Unai Emery. They seem to have a model there that ever since they came back into the Premier League, they started, I think they finished 17th, and I think they finished 12th, then 14th. And then last season, they finished, 7th. And this season, it looks like they're going on to great things. And Unai Emery's only been a part of that for a short time, but he has inherited a great squad, added a few bits that he wanted in the summer, some really good players like Diaby. But ultimately, he's also making use of the squad that they've got. So I personally don't think that the excuse that a manager can't be judged until they've got the squad that they want, I don't necessarily think that that's always reasonable, or maybe it's unreasonable, but it's reality that most managers have to work with what they inherit, because they aren't around long enough for an entire squad rebuild to happen. Notice how this guy can't praise Arteta. I mean, I don't know why I needed to praise Arteta. I think Arteta's done a good job. I don't think Arteta is anywhere near as... I don't think he's anywhere near as good this season as they were last season. I think that they're finding a way to get the job done in games, but I haven't really seen Arsenal play convincingly well to the same level as they were last season in all but maybe 1 or 2 games. I think they were impressive against Lens, and they were impressive against Wolves. But other than that, I thought they were fairly fortunate against Crystal Palace. I thought they were very fortunate against Luton. This notion that because you have a lot of possession, you deserve to win the game, and if you don't, then you were robbed. And if you do, even if you get a last-minute goal, then then you deserved it. No, that's not true at all. It all depends on how the both teams set up. Luton Town did not set up to go toe-to-toe with Arsenal. Arsenal should be ashamed of themselves for conceding 3 goals against Luton Town. And they won the game in the last minute. Everyone's applauding them, and they're saying that Arsenal deserves to win. I don't think they did. I don't think they created anywhere near enough. I don't think Arsenal have been that great this season. I know that they're currently 6 points clear. I'm not saying this as a salty Tottenham fan, Dave. I'm saying this as a fan of football. I think that Arsenal have, by hook or by crook, found a way to get it done, and they have a mentality about them right now which is impressive, and a champion, like a winning mentality, which may get them over the line. But if you want me to sit here and praise Arsenal's performances this year, so that man, whoever said that, sorry, I think you were far better last year. I think you were far better last year.
I agree with you. I don't think Arsenal have been excellent. However, they keep getting over the line. I think what the difference is they're a lot further into their project, right? But also they've continued to invest. You look at some of the players that have stepped up with winners.
Hang on, Can you
No
carry on
worries.
for 1 second?
Declan Rice stepped up with one. You know, and they didn't stop and rest on the laurels with last year's squad that got them into a title challenge. They went out again and reinvested and continued to back. And look, I do take the point that Sean is saying that, you know, sometimes a manager has to work with what he's got at a football club. And I agree with that to a certain extent. But once he's shown enough, then it's up to us as a club to continue to back that. You look at Liverpool, you know, there was ups and downs when Klopp first came, but there was enough of the good stuff for them to be able to stick with Klopp and continue to back him. And look what they went on done. One and won a Premier League, one and won a Champions League. You know, what was Tottenham's best ever, well, not best ever time, but in my lifetime, where we sort of were nearly there under Pochettino, where we had him for 5 years. You know, he's able to build that squad. And where Arsenal are at now, everyone's been together for quite some time. So they muck in for each other. They have that camaraderie and stuff like that. With us, we still don't have that yet because we keep chopping and changes between different managers. We keep bringing in players for different managers until we actually give one manager a chance. So we haven't had one manager in the dugout for a full season since Pochettino was sacked. You can't keep doing that. You know, only relegation clubs do that, and eventually it ends up catching up on you. That's why Everton, from when I first started, you know, watching football with the age I am, Everton were up there in the top half of the league. But, you know, over the last few years, poor decisions, continual sacking of the managers. Look where it's ended up with them. And we could very well end up going the same way. You know, we don't have long left out of Sonny. Do I think the club will go out and get someone to replace Sonny? No. Then what do we do? So for me, I think it's imperative that we give a manager time to build something and give him the opportunity, you know, to build that squad. You know, and that's why Arsenal are getting over the line, because they've had the opportunity to build that squad. They've been together sometimes, so they fight for each other. Whereas with us, when the games are in the balance, we haven't been together that long. We're continuously making new signings, continuously changing managers, assistant managers, you know, staff in and around the club and everything else. So there's no consistency there. And for me, if you really want to break that trend and you really, really want to go after the top, you have to give a manager a chance, like we done with Pochettino. That's how we got there. We continuously let him build. Like I was saying, Sean, I agree with your point to a certain extent that a manager has to come in and work with what he's got. But if he's shown enough good, more than bad, you have to continue to back that and let him continue to rotate that squad. Whereas at Tottenham, we haven't done that, you know, the last few years. We haven't done that. And that's a big problem.
Oh, I 100% agree. Like, I demand that there be whatever funds there are available. Listen, I know it's very easy for Tottenham fans to sit there and look at, and it's very tempting to sit there and look at other clubs, other teams who have ownership models who, you know, put their hand in their pocket. It's just a personal preference for me to admire and respect teams that do it organically. I used to absolutely admire, we're talking about Arsenal, to that guy, Chris Bacino. You talk about Arsenal. I used to admire Arsenal, even though it's my job as a Tottenham fan to absolutely despise Arsenal. I used to absolutely reflect on the way that they created so much success over the last sort of decade or two by doing it within their means, by building the stadium, by going through the patient rebuild and not being able to spend money. And it took them a while to get back on the success train, but everything that they built before that under Arsene Wenger was done organically. You know, now the only teams that have done it that remain organically successful is Liverpool. Everybody else have put their hand in their pocket and spent well beyond their means. It's just not something that I respect when you have to live a credit card lifestyle as a football club. I don't respect human beings that are that go out and you know, live way beyond their means because they're trying to you know, adhere to a lifestyle that they can't afford. I don't respect governments when they do it, live off of credit cards. I don't respect charities. I don't respect companies. I think that you should, you know, have to work and try and improve your bottom line to be able to, you know, improve the spending on the top line. And I like the fact that Tottenham aren't doing it that way, but ultimately with that comes a frustration when you see other teams doing it. And I understand why other people don't fancy to, or don't follow that same sort of path or same sort of mindset, but it's how I feel. And I hope that Tottenham will put every penny that they can towards the right transfer budget this year. On that note, Dave, are you someone that whoever we sign, if you can trust the process or the notion that Ange has agreed it, will you get behind any signing, regardless of the name, regardless of the quality, regardless of the fit for purpose, you know, ideology? if Ange has, which he said he would do, he said, no one's coming into this club unless I'm on board with it. So if we go and sign a Lloyd Kelly, if we go and sign, Illing Jr. from Juventus, if those are the sorts of players that we're signing, are you okay with that?
Look, I'm okay with that. Like I said, I like Tottenham's business model, the way we're going. And look, just before I get into that, Shawnee, I agree with you in terms of, I respect clubs that try to do it organically. And that's what we're trying to do. However, we keep making wrong decisions within that process. And I'll be honest, the older I'm getting, the less tolerance I have for it. My ticker's ticking. I need to see trophies before that last beat ends up happening. But look, when it comes to the transfer business, for me, I do think players have sort of been prejudged the last few years before they've even stepped foot on the football pitch at Tottenham, and I don't like that. I'd give any player a chance. I think sometimes people may sort of not understand where I'm coming from, but I critique, I judge players on what I see off them on the pitch. I don't judge them. I always give my opinion on how I think they'll do before we sign them and stuff like that. But I really sort of judge them on what they do on the football pitch, the impact they have at the football club. People can't understand why I can't get behind the Celso, but I'm behind, I'm fully behind Maddison. We look at the impact Maddison had over the 12 games compared to the Celso over 4 years, completely night and day. But yeah, look, I'll give them an opportunity. I'll always give a player an opportunity for sure.
Yeah. Before we move on, do you want to
just quickly this January, Shawnee, and I'll address this from Jason Bell. We have to expect, over the next couple of transfer windows, we will be signing some homegrown players. That's why we ended up putting the outlay on 50 million. I know a lot of people would say, why couldn't we spend that elsewhere? But all you had to do was look at the squad going into before deadline day, which I'd done. And I looked at it, and that's why I came out deadline day morning and says, Tottenham won't do any business unless it's a homegrown player, because that's what we need to fill the squad. When you look at the squad, we've got a lot of good, I would say, players that, are foreign. But what we don't have is our homegrown quartet. That's not strong. And I'd argue that's strong at Arsenal, strong at Liverpool, strong at City. And that's also another area where we sort of fall down and lack. But yeah, I'd 100% get behind the signings that come in. At the end of the day, we need reinforcements for sure. And I'd actually argue that I do think Tottenham have got a lot of the signings right over the last few years. It's just when we go down and rely on squad depth, that's where it really sort of becomes an issue. But Jason Bell, member for 26 months, by the way, great service, my man. Absolute great service. If I had, I'd give you a medal of honor, my man. That's unbelievable. He says, I totally agree, Dave. We simply don't have the squad depth to maintain the form we started seasons with. And look, that's where I'm at with it. I've done a lot of research. I've gone back and looked at, fixtures in years gone by, where the results sort of tend to come off. And that's why I keep banging on about it. October, November, December. It's been a huge, huge problem at Tottenham under multiple managers now. Nuno got sacked just before Halloween. Jose Mourinho, when it tailed off for him, was actually December. Conte, got off to a great start. Could have been sacked by Christmas because the form completely dropped off. But that form dropped off in and around October after the international break. Pochettino got sacked in and around October, November, December as well. I think November, if I remember correctly. So it's a continuous problem at Tottenham. That's why I keep highlighting and pointing it out. And that's why, for me, when it comes down to it, it comes down to squad depth. We just simply don't have the squad to carry injuries or suspensions. We're so reliant on them first 11 in their positions. It's just not good enough. But I'm a big up, Jason.
That's the thing for me, mate. Like I worry a little bit about. It's not worried. It is what it is, right? If Tottenham are changing tact and going, and I understand the logic from it. Looking through the accounts, looking at the player trading liabilities, looking how much money we have coming out in the short term, i.e., in the next 12 months that we owe for transfers from previous years, and how much we have in the long term, i.e., in payable within or over 1 year, but within 3 or 4, and kind of going, we are still suffering from misspend. And then you look at how much money it costs to get a bang average player, or not. Sorry, I'm not don't be rude, but like 55 or 50 million quid or whatever it was for Brennan Johnson, 60 almost for Richarlison. If you're going to get a Santiago Jimenez, he's going to cost you 60 million quid. And there just isn't that money available. If you're a football club that lives within their means, which is what Tottenham are trying to do, then you have to, until you can get positive outcomes from your player trading, then that's the system that you're going to have to go with, and you're going to struggle because the inflation in the price of transfers outgrows the amount of money that Tottenham can bring into the club. Even if Tottenham raise their revenues by 15% because of more concerts, more whatever it is, go-karting or rugby and NFL stuff, 15% is only, the right boot of a bang average midfielder once a season. So it's not enough. So I understand why Tottenham are going down this path of trying to bring in young players, hoping they develop and then sell them on in the future for 30, 40, 50 million quid. I get it. But at the same time, if you're on board with that philosophy, then you also have to be on board with patience to the process. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself insane, because on the one hand, you're saying, I'll back Ange, but if Ange is working under the directive of Daniel Levy, which again is understandable, to me, it's understandable to go after youth, go after the best young talent that's out there, Vuskovic, the Ash Phillips, the Alejo Valiz, if we're the Illing Juniors, if that's the way we go, then that's not going to have the immediate impact. It's not going to be enough for us to turn this season into a winning one. You have to shake hands with that. Or you're not okay with that process. You're not okay with what Tottenham are going to do. And you want to have here now, ready now, buy now players. But on that process, I don't think that's going to happen. So you're going to be disappointed anyway. But in that world, with the money we have available, you're only ever going to get one player. And when you've already got 4 or 5 players from the first team missing, then you're not going to have enough numbers to fill the void that the injuries that have come our way are going to continue to be a problem with. So
on that,
for me,
Sean,
yeah, go on.
On that, just quickly, my man, what I would say, it depends on what Tottenham classify as young players, because, even in the summer, we signed a lot of players that are, 23, 24, 25. You'd like to think they can come in and hit the ground running. It depends, all depends whether we go after players of that age or players of a younger age, 18, 19, 20. That's where you'll have to end up developing them. That's where you'll have to show patience. But if they're 23, 24, 25, Van de Ven, 22, Vicario, 24, players like that, you can actually expect them to come in and hit the ground running. It depends on what age of that young side that Tottenham go on target, in my opinion.
No, listen, I agree. And I don't know which version of the two it's going to be. We signed the Vuskovic, right? That cost us 10 million quid. That's 10 million. It might not be 10 million. You have to remember that in reality, your budgets are amortized, right? So if that's on a 6 or 7 year kind of deal or whatever with Hijuk split, then, it's only really 18, like, it's like 1.5 million or 2 million quid a year or something. So it's not that much in terms of out of the budget. But I think it's a little bit of a combination of both. But I'd be very surprised if we don't sign someone like an Illing Jr. And to me, I don't know whether he's going to come in and have the immediate impact, but he's still going to cost you 15 million quid. So even if you have a 60 million pound budget and you're spending 15 million on a kid who's played, a little bit here, a little bit there for Juventus, and maybe he fits the system, maybe he doesn't, maybe he's ready to come in, maybe he isn't, maybe he's the replacement for Perisic. I'm not sure, but that's going to be 25% of your budget on a player that you're going to have a lot of hits and a lot of misses. He's going to maybe have moments of excellence, but he also might struggle with that adaptation. Even though he's a London lad, he might not necessarily be ready yet. So if you have 1 or 2 of those this January, how are you going to feel? If Tottenham do sign an Illing Jr. and we go and sign somebody else that's 19 years old, that's coming from, he's had 7 or 8 starts, done a little bit here, a little bit there for some team in Spain, or for some team in Italy, or a team in the UK. If we sign that kid from Blackburn Rovers that we're looking at, are they gonna satiate you? I don't think they're gonna satiate the people in the comment section, and I don't think they're gonna satiate the people on Twitter. But if you're okay with it, if you're on board with if Ange wants it, then and he's okay to every trade, every transfer, then it's okay with me. If it's okay with him, is it really going to be okay with these people?
No, look, we know Spurs fans, it's never going to be okay, right? We want to be dining off the top shelf, and look, I understand that, to a degree. I think I think it was Checkmate makes a good point. When Spurs won a trophy, we had Keane, Defoe, Berbatov, Ledley King, Jonathan Woodgate, people like that right throughout the team, been there, done it, sort of experienced players. But look, for me, I'll be honest, I would be annoyed if an Illing Jr. came in to a certain degree, because it doesn't solve a problem. You know, for me, it's got to be a striker. Bring in a striker solves a problem. Bring in a centre back solves a problem. Not players that were
Is it a
already stuck in
combination of
them
both?
areas.
Would you be okay if you got an Ealing Jr. as your winger, as the winger that everyone needs, and you got a Santiago Jimenez or an Ivan Toney, and then you got a Lloyd Kelly? Would that be a good enough window for you? Lloyd Kelly, even though he comes with an injury problem, I still think that Lloyd Kelly, for me, I worry about his injury. I don't want to add another injury-prone player, but I do think that guy is a player that no one's seen the best of because he is a better fit for a system that allows him to spread his legs and cover, and he doesn't get to do that at Bournemouth. But would you be okay with a Lloyd Kelly, a statement striker like an Ivan Toney or like a Santiago Jimenez, whatever, and then a kid on the wing who was coming in to compete and replace Perisic?
Look, I'll be more than okay with that because, look, you know, for me, if you're bringing in Ealing Jr., right, and you still don't address that striker issue, he's still going to suffer the same problems as Kulu's suffering now, as Brennan Johnson's suffering now in terms of assists and goals, and everyone then is going to be looking at the kid. Is he good enough? You know, but and you're not really actually giving the kid a chance to succeed either by doing that, you know. But if you bring in the striker and you bring in the centre back and you bring in the kid, no problem with that whatsoever at all, no problem.
So it's a little combination of both is what you want. Like you're okay, you'll be patient with the process of youth development, but as long as we also fix the here and now.
Look, I'm okay with the youth development. You know, you routinely hear me ask for Phillips to be played ahead of Dyer or Davies, same as Dorrington. Give Donny the opportunity if other players don't want to do it. I'm not one of them.
They're not being played though, which to me is a question mark, right? Like if you've got the very best under 21 team in the Premier League right now, in the Premier League 2, you've got some absolutely standout players that are too good for that level, and you've got a manager who has been told that you're going to need to develop young players, but who doesn't choose to play them and would rather shoehorn players out of position. Look, I personally was okay with playing the 4 fullbacks ahead of Dorrington. I didn't want to see Dorrington have to be deputized alongside Eric Dyer or alongside Royale or whatever. I didn't want to see that guy thrown in the deep end in that environment against those games. It didn't happen to matter anyway because we lost most of the games either way. But Jamie Donnelly, I think, is the clearest case of potentially missing the wood for the trees here from Ange. If you do want to throw a little bit of shade on him, then I think that you can do that with some of the substitutions. Last night, if you're trying to find creativity and you're taking off Gio Lo Celso for Ollie Skip when you've got a guy on the bench who scored goals in every single position. Not for the first time. He didn't do it. He gave him two minutes against City, but he didn't do it against Villa, didn't do it against Wolves. Like, if we've got a manager that doesn't want to trial these kids and we're going down a recruitment process of youth centric, is there a problem there? Like, is there a lack of willingness, and is he doing that to prove a point, or does he just not fancy them?
No, I don't think either, Sean. For me, like, you know, I think if you go off his model of giving everybody up an opportunity, right? You've had Davies who sat there patiently all this while. You've had other players that have sat there very patiently. He's given them their opportunity. They've had a run. It hasn't worked out. From here on out, I would like to see Ange maybe be a bit more braver, give these kids an opportunity. Look, personally, where I think Ange Postecoglou is at with this, Sean, is I don't think he'll fully give them proper opportunities until they come on when Maddison's on the pitch and Van de Ven's back on the pitch and stuff like that. Personally, that's what I think maybe he's aiming at, but it could come sooner rather than later. But we have to understand, you know, and everyone was all behind us at the summer. Let's give Ndombele another chance. Let's give this guy another chance. This is Ange's model. This is what he wants to do. Now results have turned. We're relying on other individuals. Everyone's going against Ange, and no one's sitting there going, well, if this is what Ange wants anymore, which I told everybody would be the case once we start losing games. But, you know, for me, you know, he's giving players an opportunity. He's trying to weed out who's good enough, who's not. And for me, I think he knows his answers now, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that process maybe accelerated a little. But I do agree with you. One thing, like I said, that annoys me, that I don't understand where Ange Postecoglou is on this. Why he keeps giving Feliz minutes off the bench over Jamie Donnelly. That's the one thing I can't get with. But apart from that, I sort of understand it to a certain degree, but I don't want to see it continue much longer. I think by now he should already know his answers.
Okay, I've got one last question before we wrap up for you, mate. Just quickly, Adrian Chia For the super chat, big up Adrian. 3/4 of the fan base went mental when we signed Vicario. 100%, 100%, and he's been the best goalkeeper. Well, I don't know how I feel about that clumsiness last night when he came out and punched the ball. I don't know whether that was difficult to from where I could see it. It looked like I couldn't, I was on the halfway line very low, so didn't really see it, but it looked like he could have got that. Could have caught that.
That was my initial reaction on the watch along last night. What's Vicario doing? Why didn't he claim it? If he would have caught that, that's a back pass. It's a free kick inside your own area for West Ham. That's why I think he tried to be clever and try and punch it away.
Good point.
Obviously, you know what? I actually don't blame Vicario for that. I thought he'd done the best in that surrounding. He made the original mistake, shocking. But I was also pissed off with Romero and Davies in a way because they didn't react to it. Ward-Prowse got there first before anybody else. Even though that mistake was made, where was the hunger from Romero and Davies to get back and try and make it's like they were already resigned to the ball going in the back of the net off it. So for me, I don't really lay the door at Vicario for that. I thought he tried to do the best with that situation. At the end of the day, he stuck out that defense from times this season, and they weren't there to dig him out on this one. And I feel
no, there's no like I always say. I hate having to remind the audience of this, because sometimes you get people who listen to you isolate a moment and go, the player could have done better there, and then people go, I can't believe you're slagging off the player. The player's done brilliantly, and you go, well, hang about. Like you can have a general theme and you can love and admire the overall form, but you still have to reserve the right to kind of say, in this particular moment, the manager might have got it wrong. In my opinion, it doesn't mean I don't love him. The player might have done wrong. Doesn't mean I don't think he's excellent, But shout out to Adrian. Thank you for the super chat, my man.
You got Adrian.
I got to ask you this one, Dave. So, where are you at? Because I feel like the fan base right now is very much, shock horror, divided. Right? You've got people that are saying you can't challenge Ange. You wanted something to play good football. You've got what you wanted. You can't criticize him. How can you do that after the great start? Then you've got other people that are a little bit more like, it's you can feel how you want to feel, but it's still too early, and it's Daniel Levy's fault because the squad isn't good enough. You've got another side of the fan base that say, and for what it's worth, I see merit in this one, where they say you can still want Ange and think Ange is the right guy for the football club, but you can still think that he hasn't got a plan B, and the very best the very best managers will adapt. And then you got other people that will say there's a difference between a philosophy and a tactic. The tactics do change, the philosophy doesn't. Where are you at right now? Like, at the end of the day, we went 10 games unbeaten, and then we've lost 4 in the last 5, 1 point from 15. It's relegation form in the last 5. It was title winning form in the first 10. We've gone kind of from famine to feast, or from feast to famine, rather. As a fan, where are you? Are you concerned? Are you willing to critique and criticize the manager and his decisions, or is everything a little bit kind of understandable given the circumstances of the situation?
No, look, first of all, I think you're entering a dangerous world where you can't ask questions of anything, and it's not a world I want to live in. I think, people probing and asking questions is always a good thing. Some people call it nosy, but it is what it is. That's how you get people out of power that are corrupt and stuff like that, by asking questions and stuff like that. So for me, I'm always one, ask away, ask questions, definitely. It's always a good thing. And look, the reality is, right, I get it myself. Sometimes when I sort of say, oh, look at this or look at that, or during games, I'm like, look, Ange needs to make a change now. I get people say, oh, how can you criticize Ange? I was outside of Paul. I was one of the biggest promoters of Ange Postecoglou coming into this football club. And look, what I see other people ask questions of Ange, I might completely disagree with, but whatever I ask questions of, they might completely disagree with. That's the nature of football. That's why it's called the beautiful game. Everyone sees it differently. Yeah. Where I'm at right now as a fan, for me, I don't think sacking the manager is the right answer. We keep doing this at the first sign of trouble. When it looks like we're not going to make top 4. Huh?
Did you just say sacking him?
Oh yeah, where I was at as a fan, I see a lot.
Are people actually saying Ange out? I think you were joking
Out
earlier.
around the place. I start to see it creeping up more with every sort of
Wow.
defeat. But look, I do feel like managers get an unfair rap, and I do feel like that everyone's sort of, because we want to get out of this mess so bad, everyone's immediate focus is on what the manager's doing. And what I mean by that is, even that game at Fulham, the first thing people went straight to was Ange Postecoglou and the 10 changes. But no one asked the same question the following week for the following game when he made 10 changes back and we went and spanked that team. As soon as we lose, we always, the first thing everyone wants to do is always look at the manager. I don't agree with that sometimes. I think there's more than enough protection for players out there. I think we need to learn to expect and demand more from every single player that walks in at this football club. And what I mean by that is Lo Celso, for instance, hasn't performed for 4 years, but people are still out there batting him. Give him a chance. Of what evidence that he's produced over the last 4 years. You know what I mean? We're very hesitant to sort of criticize players. And that's because we think that they always have the club's best interest at heart when they're here, which they don't. Some of them just do not. We have to shake hands with that reality. Some of them come for the paycheck without having that desired work ethic or that feeling or attachment to the club, which most players don't when they come to your football club right now. That's why it is up to the fan base to make sure they know the levels you have to reach to become a Spurs player instead of pandering to every single thing they do. But also, you do have to look at the top at times. You do have to look at other areas. But I do think we're very quick. And that's proven over the last couple of seasons with how many managers, assistant managers we've had in the dugout. That when we lose games of football, we're very, very quick to go after managers. And I think if we want things to change at Tottenham, we have to give a manager at least 2 seasons at this football club, to try and then sort of judge it from there. Midway into next season, judge it from there is where I'm at with it, Shawnee, rather than just initially we're losing games, let's go straight after this, That's where I'm at with it personally.
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. I think what you just said is absolutely spot on, to be entirely honest. I've got to bring up Marshall here. Marshall's point here, I think, is spectacularly insightful. If we had this many points, but the results have been a bit more mixed, we wouldn't have people being so harsh with Ange. Yeah, I think people have very short memories, right? And recency bias is being at play here. But ultimately, I think that it is what it is. It is that the results have come the way they've come, and that's why I ask questions like, have we been found out? Because I think that Tottenham's team last night, on paper, as much as I admire West Ham, again, kills me to say it, but I think it's the best and the strongest version of West Ham, even with the absence of Declan Rice, for many, many years. And I think that it was always a very much a banana skin on. I said it, 2 or 3 times last week or this week, but yeah, I think you do have to ask those questions when you do lose 4 in 5, and the only game that you turn up for, or the only game that you get something out of, is away against the champions. What's going on there? And I'll extend that kind of notion and say I think that Newcastle on Sunday is going to be incredibly difficult. Eddie Howe is a tactician and will have learned the template. I don't think we're going to beat Newcastle, but I do think we're going to beat Forest, because I think Tottenham at the moment will have more joy away from home than they will at home, because when teams are playing at home against us, there's a bit more pressure on them to have to satiate their own fans and play a bit more football. And I think when teams play against us, we'll play better. But the teams that sit in and do and low block us, I think we're going to struggle with. I don't know if you agree with that, Dave.
No, look, I completely agree with that. The patterns have been there. Teams, even since preseason and friendlies, team that set up low block against this, they get joy. We're sort of vulnerable on the counter. I wouldn't even say vulnerable. They just seem to be clinical on the counter because that's the way they play. I completely agree with that, Sean. And we're going to have to find different solutions against low block teams, because the reality is like I said this on the 10-game run, there will come a time where teams are going to ask different questions of us, they're going to set up differently against us. And look, it's just about, the players sort of wanting these games a bit more as well. I feel like some of them results, if the players or the squad were more hungrier, I don't think we would have seen some of them slip ups either. it just seems like even when we are in touch and distance of sort of really going on and doing something, everyone gets scared, and ultimately ends up leading to our downfall. But we can't keep going up against these low block teams and not coming out with the answer. City face it week in, week out, come out with an answer. Arsenal have faced it, they come out with answers. Liverpool have faced it, they come out with answers. And if we go on another game, we start winning more games, more teams are going to use that against us. So it is. I don't want to hear anyone go, it's the opposition, they were good today. No, it's up to us to find the answers. There's many different tactics and that you come up against, and you have to find the answers. It's as simple as that.
Last question then, mate.
You never answered. Where are you at with this whole sort of thing? Answer your own question. With Andrew.
Oh no, I'm listen. I it's the best manager for me. That I'm very much trust the process. I reserve the right to critique, to criticize, to analyze, to ask questions. I think it's important that as a fan base we explore, why we all think what we think, and are we sort of predetermined to go in a certain direction because of preconceived notions that we share, or we have positivity bias towards. I think that there are going to be elements of the fan base who are leaving out, who have been leaving out, who have kept very quiet for the first 10 games and are now building momentum to get back into that notion because they want that as an outcome more than anything else. And so if I see those things emerge from people that I know follow or share that kind of thought process, then I'm like, well, your opinion to me about what's going on with Ange isn't based on what's happening with the football team. It's what's happening with the football club. And you have those kind of predispositions, and it's fine to have those. I don't care. Like, you do what you got to do. It's your right to feel the way you want to have it. But I'm interested to know how people feel who are open-minded, right? Like who feel a certain way, who haven't got necessarily strong convictions on a certain thought process. And for me right now, like I personally, for me, playing good football is the prerequisite. Everything else should come from that. I don't want to play terrible football in the hope it turns into trophies. I want to play good football in the hope it turns into trophies. And if you're not playing good football as the foundation, then it's not for me. I'm a traditional Tottenham fan, but I think that you can still ask questions about Ange. I think that there are tactical questions that have. I think let me give you this as an example. After the Wolves game, right? I was fuming. I traveled up in the rain and the sleet, 4 hours to go to Wolves with Henry. Watch the game. I've got a 4.5, 5 hour journey back, probably a 6 hour journey because of the traffic at the end of it. And we didn't turn up, right? And I'm fuming. I was fuming. I was angry after the game. I was like, it doesn't mean I'm like, I've lost faith or patience or whatever, but I'm angry. I feel like I've got a right to be. I spent my entire day in a car listening to Henry Wright's music choices, right? Which were terrible, by the way, Henry. You need to get a better Spotify playlist. And I feel like, if I don't feel like the players have turned up, then what's that?
I'll give you mine. You'll be buzzing. There's a bit of everything in there.
I'll take that. But I feel like you have a right to have a moan, right? And everyone was telling me you can't criticize it. How you're missing the wood for the tree. I'm like, well, maybe I'm a little bit emotional, but I still feel the way I feel. The players didn't turn up. I thought the manager got it wrong. He didn't play. He played Conte ball, not Ange ball. Like, we didn't do it the way we're supposed to do it. And then everyone's telling me I'm a mug for going down that thought process. Within 24 hours, you hear Ange's initial thoughts, which were fairly defensive. 3 days later, he himself has acknowledged that he got it wrong for that particular game, right? So if everybody is of this process where you have to believe in Ange ball, you can't critique it, but Ange himself has acknowledged that he got it wrong that day, then I think that we as fans have every right to say, I love the guy, I love what he's trying to do, but he doesn't get it right. He's human and he can err like everybody else can. And I think that he got some decisions wrong yesterday. I think that playing Højbjerg for me wasn't the right decision. Or if he started the game the way he did, he should have realized pretty soon that David Moyes has set up a certain way and he should have adapted, been a bit proactive with the situation, not taken off Lo Celso for Skip, But if anything, take off one of Bissouma or Højbjerg and bring on a forward that's got creativity, whether that's Donnelly or whether that's or Brian Hill or whatever, but something that can try and affect the low block. He didn't do it. I think that there's access there to a rationale to investigate and critique his decision making. Doesn't mean that I've lost faith in the guy. I think the guy needs more help. I think the squad needs to be better. I think he needs more time. I think there's going to be this vulnerability and this flexibility, this volatility in the outcome, given what we're going through with injuries. But I'm still with him. But I think that at times he makes mistakes like we all do.
What I would say is, Sean, first of all, don't let them annoy you, right? First of all, because the more they annoy you, the more it's going to sway your opinion to the opposite way against it, right? It's natural. But what I will say is look, I think why there's such a clamor of people saying stop questioning Ange is because ultimately that's how manager sackings start to happen, right? More and more people come out and start questioning, and ultimately the club listen to the noise around, boom, out you go. Let's bring in another manager to appease the fans. I also think fans are sick of hiring and firing managers, and I think they've come to a point where they're like, well, hang on, when we keep seeing the same things, look, I take your point about Ange saying he got this wrong and he got that wrong, but we also have to understand, and look, we're all guilty of reading into every single minute thing they say, analysing every minute thing he says, player says, everything else. But what we fail to realise in the moment, there is a lot of 5D chess going on. Whether Ange believes he was at fault or not, sometimes he'll come out and say it to protect the players to get a performance. True. When you're losing games, more and more they're going to come out and put the blame on themselves, hoping they get a reaction out of the players. So we do have to understand that as well, that there is
100%.
5D chess.
All I'm saying is those people who said after the Wolves game, for God's sake, you can't critique. You can't go after Ange. No one was going after him, but you're allowed to have an opinion around what happened. And then when he himself said, I got it wrong, you kind of go, well, is it okay? Well, shouldn't those same people be turning around to Ange and saying, Ange, you can't doubt yourself, bro. You can't doubt yourself because you're the best thing since sliced bread. You're perfect. He's human. He's going to make mistakes. Everyone is. It's okay to have an opinion that differs from him, but at the same time still have absolute faith in him as the solution to what we're trying to achieve. And that's where I'm at. I think that he is the perfect manager for Tottenham. I want him to do really well. I need him to get the players that he needs within reason. I don't expect Daniel Levy to break the bank for it, but to do what we can, where we can. But we give him the patience. But at the same time, if I feel like he shouldn't have played a certain player and there was someone else that should have played, then I am going to reserve the right to say I disagree with Ange on that. But you know what? He's paid the big bucks. I can't even get limited ads off of my YouTube. So, I'm not paid at all to have an opinion on this, but I'm still going to say how I feel. And I think that last night, as much as we dominated possession, I don't think we played very well.
Look, I think many people agree, right? The style of football is pleasing on the eye. The philosophy we enjoy. I think you're entitled to question team selections. We all do it. Everybody does it, But what I will say is, I'll caveat that though, Sean, by saying, again, we do make managers take more or less every single bit of the blame. When Conte went out, everything that was happening at Tottenham was his fault. When Conte left, everything that was happening at Tottenham was his fault. And we think these managers will go out the door and everything will just change and everything else. In reality, we've seen over the last 4 years, we haven't done it. It hasn't, although I agree with, question, personnel choices and stuff like that. I don't think we should be going after the tactics. I think many people need to realize what they asked for come the end of last season. A manager that worries about how Tottenham play and not so much focus on the opposition. A manager that plays football the Tottenham way, which means gung-ho attacking football. Now we've got that. Now everyone's starting to question, is it true gung-ho? Should we be pulling back here? But the reality is fans weren't happy when we were thinking like that last season.
I'm not sorry. That's not what I'm saying.
When it comes to tactics and philosophy, I think we should lay off them and just accept it is what it is. No. That's why we brought them here.
The philosophy I'm on board with.
Yeah.
The tactics I'm generally on board with. I think you have to separate the two. But within the tactics, there are there's the
things you can tweak.
minutia. There is like, what's the right 11? And as I said, I've said it 3 times. It's the last time I'll say it. I don't think that he should have necessarily known before the game that David Moyes was going to set up the way he did. I think that some people would say it was obvious that West Ham come to Tottenham, they're going to low block, they're going to try and break. You can look at the pros and the cons of the West Ham team and think that's obvious what they're going to do. They've got pace in Bowen and Kudos and Paquetá. They've got the creativity, they've got the fluidity, but they're weaker at the back, right? They're weaker at the back than they are at the front, so they're going to sit in and protect and then break when there's a mistake. That's fine.
Tactic-wise, what would you have done then differently?
If
Forget
you wanted
the personnel, tactic-wise, what would you have done differently?
Well, like I say, for me personally, as soon as it was obvious that there was no midfield battle, because there was no midfield battle, as soon as that was clear to me, it took me 10 minutes to realize that in the game, and I was talking to Gus Poyet about it.
I'm not going to make a change in 10 minutes in, though.
No, I'm not saying you change it in 10 minutes, but once you become aware of it, then you put it into your mind, and you think, okay, what do we do when we do it? I was talking to Poyet. I said, it's all too easy. There's no midfield battle here. And he said 100%, but we don't, we have to get the second goal. Or there was maybe 15, 20 minutes in, we have to get the second goal. Right. And I was like, yeah. And then as the second half went on, I was like, what are we doing now, Gus? And he goes, look, the problem is we haven't got any more options. We haven't got the options on the bench. But for me, once you realize that there's no midfield battle, there's no need to have two number 6s on the pitch, which is Højbjerg and Bissouma. One of them could have been sacrificed for I said it now, I've said it twice, either a Donnelly, or it didn't have to happen in the 20th minute, but at some point in the game, you don't take off Lo Celso and bring on Skip, right? You if anything, you keep Lo Celso on, drop him into the 8, and then you bring on a Donnelly, you bring on a Brian Hill, you do something else. That there's no midfield battle. It was all about how do we break them down, and we didn't do anything in that regard. If anything, the substitutions protected something that wasn't there to protect. There was no fight. There was no fight in the midfield from West Ham.
No, look, I fully get what you're saying, but again, I think when you look at the substitutions, he emptied the bench. He tried to change it. He brought Kulu off the wing here, come the end of the game and tried to put him through the middle and stuff like that. He changed it, but again, you're talking more personnel changes to try and change tactics or try and change the flow of the game rather than the actual tactics. For me, like I said, I don't think the tactics is the issue. I get criticized, or questioned all about personnel change and stuff like that. Fine. But when it comes to tactics and stuff like that, I think we all need to realize they do work. It's just how the players implement them when they walk over that white line. Yesterday, not so great. Great up until the final third, but from there was absolutely nothing. And look, I get what you're saying about the substitutions. I understand that there was a lot of people sort of unhappy to see Skip enter the fray. At the same time,
the other thing I'd say, mate, is there was no animation from Ange, and I was sat in the perfect spot. He was 10 feet in front of me for the entirety of the second half. He just stood there watching. There was no communication from him. I didn't see Ryan Mason.
Annoying.
Ryan Mason didn't come out of his dugout. The other fella didn't either. Usually there's it's a hotbed of activity where they're trying to they're coming up with ideas. Like in the first half, Ryan Mason jumped out of his seat 3 times and whispered or said something to Ange, and Ange's like, okay, cool. Like they're communicating. Second half, there was nothing. There was no. It was almost like a fait accompli.
I'm one of them. I find that in them sort of games, it's hard to tweak things tactically when you're so dominant and you've got the opposition more or less sitting on their own box. It's really hard, in that sort of moment to tweak things tactically to find the answer. Because the reality is, you can make changes and bring players off the bench, but if you don't have the right components for the puzzle, you're going to struggle. And that's our biggest problem, right? Yesterday, we didn't have the right puzzles for the problem, the right components.
And that's the thing, Dave. That's the thing. Like, where I was sat, and again, my own perspective, but from where I was sat, I think my takeaway was there's a massive difference between dominating the game and dominating possession. I felt like.
But if you're dominating possession, though, Sean, you are more or less dominating the game. We
We
just
didn't, but
didn't create good chances.
It was attack. It was attack again. I'll go back to this notion that I see on neutral fan channels. I see the Football Terrace saying things about the Arsenal Luton game. Oh, Arsenal deserved to win. They dominated. They didn't. They didn't. It was by design. Luton didn't try to go toe to toe with Luton. And Tottenham last season, every time we lost the game, or every time we won if we won a game but we had 30% possession, the neutral fan was saying you were so lucky. Well, no, you're not lucky if it's by design to sit in and counter. And I don't think
but
that
it's
yesterday,
by design because they know they can't go toe to toe.
but
So
that's fine. But it's not.
It's in a harder game.
Having 70% possession does not mean that you deserve to win the game.
No, it doesn't mean you deserve to win the game, but it does show you're dominating large periods of that game. It doesn't mean you deserve to win it. Of course, you don't deserve to win it. You know, we didn't deserve to win that.
I thought West Ham had more chance. I thought West Ham had more chances to score in the first half. They had 2 or 3 chances that were gilt-edged chances, and they put them wide. Like I say, as much as it kills me to say it,
the reality is, right, we played like West Ham did all last season, and nobody liked it. Nobody wants us to play that way. So I struggle to suggest. I struggle to sort of understand what we're asking for. I agree with you in terms of possession doesn't mean you deserve to win a game, but it does show you're dominating a game. And you know, Ange isn't going to play the other way because other managers got sacked playing that way.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm more than happy for him to continue this process. But for me, it felt like we were just passing the ball around a hell of a lot. Like someone would go, oh, it's not easy for me to find the perfect pass here, so I'm just going to pass it. Again, it was no speed to it. It was a lot. It was slow and methodical, but with no killer instinct. And so for me, I just feel like this notion that West Ham I've seen people saying it was a smash and grab. No, it wasn't. I thought it was a tactical masterclass from West Ham, and I thought they absolutely. For me, there's no way that I don't think we deserve to win the game. I don't think we deserve to win that game.
I'll be honest. I'm not going to go as far as calling it a tactical masterclass because Moyes sets up that way every single week, regardless of the opposition. You know, it's just West Ham players implementing them tactics. You know, making the right decisions at the right moments when they got them breaks. So I'm not going to call it a tactical masterclass by any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't. It's the way they play every week. Just players execute the tactics better on the day than what we did.
Right.
That's
okay.
What I'm with it.
Okay. I mean, semantics. You haven't got to call it a tactical masterclass, but they outplayed us in what mattered. Right. They didn't let us get close to scoring in the second half, and then they broke away and scored 2 goals.
But it's easier to create chances when you're counteracting on the team, and Tottenham have most of their players up in and off the opposition box. But it's harder to have chances when West Ham have 11, every single player, you know, behind the ball, which they did last night. It's much harder. And that's why I say it comes back to us not doing enough to break them down. So much possession, but we didn't do enough to break them down. In effect, we controlled large parts of that game, you know, but we just didn't do anything with it. And that was our problem.
Yeah, control. Yeah. I think that's the right word. We controlled the game. We didn't dominate. I think we controlled it, but we didn't create enough to get the killer instinct. Look, it is what it is. We're going to move. We've got Newcastle on Sunday. I expect a lot of the same, if I'm entirely honest. And I'm terrified of a similar kind of outcome. You know, and Newcastle at the top end of the pitch have got a lot of pace, an incredible amount of trickery. They're strong in the air, strong from set pieces, even though they're decimated by injuries. They're on the back of a very humiliating 4-0 defeat to Everton. If Newcastle sit in and tuck in deep with that, they've got a very strong defense, even though they're missing Dan Burn. You know, Lascelles is not that bad of an add-in, and then they've got Kieran Trippier and the like. You know, what's his name, Sher as well. I think that there's Shah, whatever you want to call it.
Shah, I love
Shah. Yeah, he's a good player. It's gonna be difficult on Sunday. I'll be there. Mate, I think it's about time we should probably wrap up. 2 hours. We're supposed to be an hour, but we've gone again like we always do. Love these shows with you, mate. It's always fascinating to get your insights. yeah, where can people find you if you're obviously everyone knows where it's a multi-stream, isn't it? But tell us anyway.
Yeah, look. First of all, look, just quickly, Newcastle are fair for that. You know, they ain't going to sit us off us the way West Ham did. They just ain't. You know, they're going to look to press us, force us into mistakes. And they're just as good, if not better, in possession than what we are. So it might actually be a case where we might actually find ourselves without possession for large periods if Newcastle play as well as they did against United. If they play like they did against Everton, we'll beat them handy enough. It depends on what Newcastle team turns up. But look, I just want to say I absolutely enjoy these streams. Like we said, we plan to go for an hour, just like when we were doing the pre-records, plan to go for 15 minutes and we're there, you know, way over time. But I absolutely love it. I feel re-energized, refreshed. I feel like I've got the therapy I needed. So thank you very much for that, Sean, because I wasn't actually going to do anything this evening whatsoever. Mate. So I appreciate that. I just want to say to everybody as well, I appreciate you tuning in and showing the love. I know it's Friday night, but coming up Christmas, that a lot of people have, you know, plans and stuff like that. So for all you guys who did make an effort to tune in, you know, I really do appreciate that. And not only that, but show the support over both channels with super chats, memberships and stuff like that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, 100%. Guys in the comments, you guys have been superb. You can find Dave. If you're on the Spurs Talk Show, then make sure, we haven't actually asked throughout the stream here. It was silly of us, but keep hitting the like. If you haven't already, please smash the like button. If you're on the Spurs Talk Show, then smash the like here. Make sure you get over to Dave. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe on the Irish Hotspur. The link is in the title. And make sure you hit the like button there. And if you're over on Dave's channel, would really appreciate it. If you haven't already, then come over and share the love on this channel as well. And as I say, guys, we are going to be doing, this is going to be a regular thing, these multi-streams. We're planning on doing 2 a week starting next week. We're going to be doing something called 10-Minute Tottenham, which is where we're going to try and get in an hour stream. I think it's going to be on a Tuesday, on a Thursday, or Monday and a Wednesday or something. We're going to be talking about 4 different... What's that?
Depending on what day the games fall during the week.
Yeah, depending on the games, but it's going to be sometime in the early afternoon in the kind of European time zones. 10-Minute Tottenham, so we're going to be talking about particular topics for 10 minutes, getting our little debates on. It's going to be fun. But guys, we'll leave it there, and I'm doing a stream tomorrow to prepare for the Newcastle game. Dave, what's coming up on your channel?
Yeah, tomorrow we'll put out the creators' predictions, then we'll put out the predicted lineup as well. And then just Sunday for the sort of game day sort of content. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. And look, hopefully you do enjoy these shows, you know, and, you know, that you want to watch more of me and Sean going forward. And look, also, you know, get stuff in that you want us to talk about. Participate in it with us, you know. Get stuff in that you want us to address as well. Don't be afraid to demand more of us.
100%, yeah. Demand more like we do from Tottenham. Yeah. Think of us like Daniel Levy. Demand more. All right, guys, we'll leave it there. Enjoy your weekend. Happy Friday to everybody. Like, subscribe, and comment to both channels. And as always, come on, you Spurs.